this table will have to go up to the podium to speak so that we can see who you are and so everybody can hear you. Those of us here, we need to talk to these little guys much more closely. I understand we're not picking up well. Secondly, something that everybody needs to be aware of. When you're on the Finance Committee, you have a First Amendment right to have your opinion anytime, any place. That is your right. However, when we are all exercising our First Amendment right, we must always remember if we are attending a meeting as a Finance Committee person, or we've been invited to go see somebody as a Finance Committee person, we must be very clear that A, nothing that we say is a decision by the Finance Committee. There is nobody here that has the authority to speak for the Finance Committee. When we do that kind of thing, it's at a deliberative session, and we, as a group, come together to decide if we want to see a warrant article changed, a line item changed, and then we give our opinion to the various boards. That's the best we can do, but at no time can any of us ever go around and make the mistake of saying, I, as finance person, can do this. But you can certainly discuss everything that's at a Board of Selectmen meeting, any meeting you go to, even here, you can discuss it and say, I don't like this, as long as you don't say, I am sitting on the Finance Committee and as a Finance Committee person, I don't like it. You're good to go. But you need to be aware of that because people can take it out of context. Secondly, we have fire coming in next week at 6:30. They have some questions. They want us to go, and this will happen with both PD and highway, that's normal, and the schools. If they hear us deliberate and they're not happy in the direction we're going, they are more than welcome to come back and ask to get more clarification, what we need, why we don't like something. We're happy to have open communication. But at this point in time, tonight, as in any other time, we are here to be polite to each other, to be respectful, just as we would like people to respect us. Our questions are not always non-confrontational. They're not meant to be confrontational, but we ask difficult questions. That's our job. And our job is to be respectful when we ask that. So we must all remember that. Other than that, I think we can now start the meeting. And Neil, I just want to make sure, you are here till you have planning board, correct?
Right.
Okay. So we are going to have our highway department head, Benji Knapp, go first because he is very, very sick and we want him to go home and go to bed.
That's all right. I was sick all week and I was at work, so. But thank you.
You want to do your budget first?
Whatever you.
Let's start with the budget and muddy the waters as we go along.
This is the one we got on Tuesday.
No, these are yours. These aren't mine. Almost. I just fixed it. Right, but you gave me highway PD. Yes. Thank you. All right, highway is under H. And for Benji's convenience, I will recognize the people on the Finance Committee to raise questions. Again, you can ask a question, then a follow-up, and I will look to see if anybody else needs to ask something before we go back to the original question. Is that okay with you, Benji?
Yep.
Okay.
Perfect.
Go ahead.
How's everybody doing tonight? Good? All right. Well, if it's all right with you guys, we can start. Your numbers and my line numbers are a little different. So after salary here, because that was all, it's all figured in. Have nothing to do with that really. So at line I-410, which should be telephone, be your 384. We'll start there. Does that work for everyone? You went up $362. I guess I gotta get paper so I can follow along here. There we go.
I brought one, I lost it.
So that just changed $360. Basically, because we had to add 2 new lines for the fire alarm at the new highway garage. Electricity got moved to government building maintenance. Heating, although I don't really have much for heating, it costs money. You guys want me to go every single line or just jump to the high increases, or how would you like me to do it, I guess?
Any preference, ladies and gentlemen?
Sure. Yep, I do. Yep. Just cross-reference them. So, does that work for you? Because a lot of them going down here are the same. So the clean and service,
Oh, okay.
416 on mine. I do have yours, but I gotta find out where I am on it here. Where are we? All right, there we are. Just proposed $1,920. This is someone come down to my highway garage once a week, do a little house maintenance around the hallways and the bathrooms. Your 389 oxygen cylinders. It's labeled as oxygen cylinder, but that's all our gases for welding. So
Oh, okay.
it's acetylene and oxygens for your cutting torches, and then you have various welding gases, mainly argon for steel welding, but we have aluminum gases and things like that too. So, and we keep overspending it, so I increased that a little bit just because if we overspend it, we might as well get the line up to where it needs to be for a year, right? The next 4 didn't change any. Highway fuel, $3.94. That increased, and that's due to the selectmen's rate they set for the fuel and gasoline.
We underbid it last year, didn't we? We figured lower than we should have on fuel last year, or no? Gas?
No, it went to default.
Okay.
We overspent a little bit, but like I said, because it was the default number, I think we had asked for more than that last year.
Do you feel comfortable with that number, Benji?
Yeah, it's hard to tell what fuel's gonna do, but, or how much we're gonna work. Trucks just got done running 36 hours, so we have them once a week. You know, you never know, right? Hopefully we don't have the winter we had this winter. Our winters start in November and go to April, and we plowed April 19th this year, so we started November 15th already for this season. So. Then we go back down, keep going a few more lines. There isn't much for changes till we get to oils and lubricants.
I'm sorry, can we just go back to that for, in terms of vehicle fuel?
Yep.
So, if you look at your average, has it been fairly consistent, your usage is what we're asking? Or has it been up in the past couple of years because of certain reasons, or? I mean, obviously, we can't control the price.
Right.
But if your usage is the same, do you expect it to be, is it relatively the same every year?
Yeah, it depends so much on the winter, I guess.
Right, I mean, is it, you know,
We
20%
don't-
more, 50% more sometimes, or?
It can be up to
I'm just
50, I would say, you know, on a really hard winter. I mean, that's a lot. But this winter, the trucks ran a lot,
Okay.
a real lot. We didn't, you know, even like this year, I get a lot of comments, well, you guys have had an easy winter so far. Well, we haven't. We've had many salt and sand events, and they run all the same. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. So, highway, oil and lubricants, you guys is 401.
There we are.
I asked to increase that $2,000 just because that's, history shows that we've been spending $10,000 to $12,000 a year on oils and lubricants. So That's everything. That's grease, hydraulic oil, motor oil, everything that could be considered a lubricant or an oil. And, you know, petroleum doesn't ever seem to go down, it doesn't seem like, so. Building repair and maintenance. I know I got a new building, but it still require maintenance. That's your guys' 407. And just can't do a whole lot, you know, for $2,500, so I asked to increase that to $5,000, just to maintain garage doors and lighting and air lines and things like that.
As of December 20th, we spent $11,000 on building maintenance. I'm just curious, we've got a new building, what were we doing that triggered that? Sorry.
A lot of that went into equipping some of it.
Okay.
You know, getting some airlines running more corners of it and things like that, you know. I put remote openers on my doors so it'd be more efficient. So the guy didn't have to go all the way around the building, shut the door, hold some of the heat in, you know,
Okay.
things that maybe didn't get think of to begin with. Another thing is cleaning that furnace. You know, I guess nobody really thought of that, including myself, when we didn't ask for any money last year for building maintenance. But we clean it to a point, but there's time you need a professional to come down. And this fall I hired them to come fire it for the first time, so we made sure everything was up and running. And that's pretty expensive. They got to come all the way down. Where are they? They're up north. They charge from the time they leave till the time they get, till the time they get back, the time they leave. And it's a few $100s every time they come down, so.
Okay.
And it makes it run so much more efficiently. I burn a lot less fuel, which I know is free, but it burns a lot of it, so we don't want to run out.
Thank you.
And the last one on my sheet, which I suppose we'll probably talk about this one for a minute, B409 gravel road maintenance. That's a new line. The reason we put that in there was mainly because it's a maintenance thing, something we do every year, same as coal patching, same as signs, things like that we already have in the budget, and other lines, paint, striping, things like that. So I put that in there, and that's another $42,000 that we can spend actually fixing the roads. Because everything comes out of road reconstruction, gravel crushing, and calcium chloride comes out of road reconstruction. So if it's a maintenance thing that we have to do every year, and believe me, we have to calcium every year. Now it's been done. People don't let me not do it. So that's all at $12,000. I spent my full 12 this year, and I probably could have done one more round of calcium, but I was out of money. So that's why that number is in there.
So the idea is it leaves you more money to do road construction with.
It will.
Bill?
Yeah, Benji, it's just a thought. It ties into the road reconstruction
Right.
bond question.
Mm-hmm.
That requires a 3/5 vote to pass.
Mm-hmm.
And by taking this money out for gravel road, it kind of takes the people who live on gravel roads out of that same degree of interest. If my thought is that if all monies for road reconstruction, at least this year when the bond issue is on there, all for one, one for all, your best opportunity to get a 3/5 vote, if that is what the town desires, is to keep it all together, I think, for a year. When you pull it out, I think the mindset is some people are gonna say, I don't care about the paved road. Even though they may have to drive on one to get to where they're going,
Right.
they say, I don't have the same interest, and it could impact that vote. So
Now,
if you're trying to get that through, if you pull that 42,000 out this year out of the operating budget and keep it in road reconstruction with I think there's another 15,000 for the glass crushing.
Right.
That goes with that. It's about 57,000 out of the operating budget to keep with road construction, to see what happens this year with the votes. Just a thought.
I actually spoke to Lori about that once. I guess my feeling was it was a maintenance thing, so I kind of put my feelers out there for it, and everyone does, except for on Apple Way, does have to go on a paved road to get to their gravel
Right,
road.
right. No, it's just
Um,
how you want to how the selectmen want to present it, you know, to the voters. What do you want to try?
Any other questions? Neil?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Where is the 15,000 for glass?
It's a transfer station.
Thank you. And line 740, cutting edges. In 16, you spent 12,000. In 17, you spent 6,000. The budget appropriation for 2018 was 20,500. So far, you've spent under $6,000. And you're proposing to spend, you're asking for 20,500.
740.
How come we spend so little and you ask for the same amount each year? Thanks.
Thank you. 38,
So,
same thing.
fortunately for me, when I started, we had more cutting edges and I had racks to put them on. And we had hard times in other areas such as vehicle maintenance. So I kind of skimped on cutting edges to make sure, tried not to go over that line. And this year I knew I was over on some other lines, so I kind of cut back. Now actually did an inventory day. I need to order some. And you put on one set of cutting edges. When you do a front plow, it's 11-foot plow and all the trucks you guys see. We have a set of carbides, which is 3 segments, and then a cover blade. And that's almost $1,200 per plow to do that. So I need to put in a big order, and it'll probably spend, probably one order is gonna be close to 10 grand. So I kind of kept skimping, just ordering a couple sets at a time, but I need to put some back on the shelf. That's why I haven't spent any over the last 2 years. So this year when we get to vehicle maintenance, you'll see it went over by crazy amounts, and I was trying to stay within my budget, but then I got hurt in other places. Now I'm behind on cutting edges, so next year you'll probably see that. Spent right up there. Was there another question I missed? Or we answered? Okay.
Anyone else? You're cleared to continue.
All right, I'll flip my page over. Let's see, where were we? No, I won't flip my page over. Hang on. Got me out of line here. Yeah, vehicle maintenance. So I asked to increase that by 10,000. Trying to find it on my sheet. That really isn't enough, but in light of trying to get a budget to pass, we got to start somewhere, right? I spent 120 this year on vehicle maintenance, and you guys can come down and look at my trucks anytime you want. It wasn't spit shining them; it was just fixing them. And I'd like to add, although I'm sure you guys can look and figure it out for yourselves, that maintenance really is just repairs. That shouldn't say maintenance. It should say repairs, because all the oils is in that oil line that you see, and grease, which is maintenance. Tires is I have a tire line. Cutting edges, I have a cutting edge line. So that's just when something breaks down. So I'm asking for 85,000. Any questions on vehicle maintenance? Beautiful.
Looks like you're good.
Roadside mowing went up 1,700 because that's what the tractor went up this year for a month.
Oh, okay.
Try to rent it a month. Again, that isn't, you gotta pick something. That isn't enough time to mow this town. This town really should own its own mowing tractor, but that's what it costs to rent it a month.
Benji, when you rent the tractor, are you renting the driver too, or do you
No.
drive it one of your own men?
We have our own, yeah. Way more to even hire someone else, so. And I happen to be fortunate. I got a guy that used to mow for the state for 10 years, and he does a phenomenal job. He pushed the roads so when I've been sending him out, I send him to an area and tell him to do them right. I don't care if he doesn't get the whole town or not. He pushed them back as far as they have been in a long time. I got one phone call out of 4 weeks about the brush, and that's great, because usually you get 10 a day, so. And that's one of my biggest pet peeves, driving down and seeing the brush all growed in, you know? It isn't good for anybody, so. Uniforms, it's a contract that we signed with the company this year. Went up $1,482. That's about it for highway. You guys got any questions on it?
You look good.
All right, transfer station. Wasn't really any changes until you get down to my hauling contracts, which isn't much we can do about it, but we're more than welcome to talk about it. And they went up just due to contracts. And the reason the numbers look so high was, this was a huge, huge hit that hit me on default last year. Because I had to carry the numbers over from the year before, and we signed a new contract last year, and some of it went up, my trash went up 18%. So carrying those numbers over from 17 was, everything that you see that's hauling related, that hurt really bad for me, so that's why those increases are so big. There's one new line in here, you'll see it's paper disposal, which is $443 for you guys. So newspapers are recyclable. We used to get paid for. Now we have to pay to dispose of it. Right now it's still cheaper to pay to dispose of it to the recycling center than it is to haul it to Wheelabrator, the trash. So that's why we're still recycling it. But we do have to pay to dispose of it. So that's an estimate for the number of loads that we usually haul. It's kind of a number I just picked, but it is an educated number looking on.
The paper, you're paying the regular recycler, but they don't recycle it. So what do? Haul it to be burned?
I don't know if they're recycling it or not, or if it's worth so little that, you know, maybe they're not getting enough to make what they need to on it. I'm not sure. Everything used to go to China. Now they're mad at us. Doesn't help the recycling business very much. So. And then, I suppose, glass crushing probably would be the next source of conversation. That is in the road reconstruction, and that, I don't think has anything to do with road reconstruction. It's something that the state told us that we had to do to manage it, and there was no money anywhere, so we just started pulling out of road reconstruction. It's not even the same department. Road reconstruction's highway, this is the transfer station.
What do we do with it when we crash it?
Well, we used to put some of it in the road, but I've been left with such a pile, and anytime the tailgates leak on the trucks and any of that, it's kind of piled up. I use it once in a blue moon in the road.
So
It works okay, you just have to bury it, because God forbid somebody walks their little poodle through it or something after you put it down, so. You can it's legal to use, and it works very well, but you gotta be mindful to not put it somewhere where somebody's gonna play in it.
Yeah.
So you have to hire someone with a glass crusher, so that's a specialty business, they get to charge a little more money, and it has to go out to bid. It's kind of an estimated number, but I have to do it this year.
But if we're not really using it on the roads, because to your point, you've got to be careful what you do with it, are we just making piles of crushed glass then to do what with?
For the moment, I hope to have some big project. I kind of voted, we did a couple really big box outs on Flanders Memorial here. I was a foreman. I really tried hard to get him to let me put that in as a, was even gonna have other towns, cause it was gonna be like a trial thing, cause we had some new fabric a company brought out for us to try and everything, so it was kind of a trial piece of road. I really tried to let me use that, but I lost my vote. So something like that would work. It was a 4-foot cut, And it's never gonna be seen again, it's never gonna hurt anything. We put gravel and pavement over it, would work perfect, but we don't do those every year.
Tom?
Did you say at one of the meetings that when they grind up the glass, I've never seen it after it's been ground, that it's just like fine as sand? It's
It
not
is
like
fine.
chunks of glass? It's-
No, you would have a hard time cutting yourself. You could, but you'd have a hard time grabbing it and really cutting yourself. You'd never pop a car tire, nothing 100 years in it.
Keith?
So are we recycling anything anymore? Doing all this sorting stuff and maybe just throwing it away?
Well, the definition of recycling is keeping it out of the trash stream, so we're not paying to dispose of it.
But you are paying.
Yeah.
Paying 8,000 for
A
the,
lot less money than throwing it in the trash.
so we aren't recycling anything? That is the answer to my question?
Well,
None
it
of that
is,
stuff is sorted?
it is sorted. It's all sorted.
I know it's all sorted. Is any of it being recycled and getting money for it? Aluminum, tin, anything?
Yep, aluminum, tin, cardboard, plastic.
So those still are.
Right. Those being paid for. Don't misunderstand recycling from revenue.
Okay.
Just
No,
because
no.
you're not getting paid for it doesn't mean it's not recycled.
Okay, you used to get paid for aluminum, for instance.
Yep,
Do you still?
yes.
You get paid for anything else or only aluminum?
Aluminum, tin, cardboard, plastic,
You do still get paid for that?
all those things.
Okay.
Everything but newspaper, and we never got paid for glass. Nobody's ever gotten paid for glass unless they wanted to pick out all their clear jars and they were washed first.
Yeah.
And they weren't broken, so. The town of Ossipee tried that once, believe it or not, so God help them for
It's
that.
not going very well.
But glass is a problem everywhere. I go to the NRA meetings and everything. We'd love for someone like Pike Industries or someone to step up and take, but nobody wants to put their neck out for it. And you can't really throw it away. You can throw a bottle in the trash, but the Wheelabrator, where we take it, would put their foot down if all the towns started throwing it in, because they'd have a big blob of molten glass in the bottom of their burner at the end of every year. So sure, they'll take it if it's in a bag, but if they started seeing the amount of glass I take a year, and then every other, however many hundreds of towns there are in the state, they would put their foot down. So we have to. And this DES makes me manage it, and crushing is the only way I know to manage it. So. But recycling's down. The money we're getting, you look in the revenue line, it is, and it's two things follow recycling: trade and petroleum. And petroleum prices are down, plastics go down, so we're still getting paid for those. But that's why you'll see we don't sort 3s through 7s right now, things like that, because they're just not worth any money. So.
And
Dennis?
when you, sorry. So for the glass crushing, do you do crushing in the new pit on East Road as well?
We'll do some gravel crushing.
Gravel
The glass just gets hauled down to our pit in the transfer station.
Okay. But they can't crush that at the same time, is that what you're saying?
It's different type of.
They don't
so
use a cone
No,
type? Okay.
no, because it's too jagged. We actually tried that, and it is pretty jagged. Then you have like 1.5 pieces of glass that actually could do damage to a
Okay.
car tire or something. We did do that once.
So they're pretty much bringing it down to almost sand, back to sand.
Yes, yep,
Right.
yep, pretty much, yep.
So, okay.
And all the trash is recycled out of it, the beer caps and the paper and stuff. Someday I'd like to have our own glass crusher. They make them in feed with a skid steer, and you do it on a weekly basis, but it's another expense that I don't want to talk about this year. So, on that paper, that's all I got for increases that are not contract related. Anybody have any questions about the contract? Colin? Or any other lines for that matter? Transfer station?
No?
All right, we'll go to sewer. And really have much change there, other than gonna have a one-time purchase of a new spare pump to put in the sewer station this year. The reason for that is we always had a spare in that building, and it got used back in 2015 and never got replaced. And we had a big problem there this year. One failed, and I didn't have a spare. And the time I went out to bid and got a company to come in, I don't think I slept for 3 weeks, because if that other one failed, we'd had a bad problem. So I want a spare sitting in on the floor. Hopefully it's 10 years before we need it, but that would be a you-know-what kind of mess right in the center of town. And then water. And the only real thing, oh, I'm sorry. Are we all set on sewer?
Question on sewer.
Go ahead.
Professional services was taken out of the proposed, so it's not necessary, is that the deal?
That was while I was trying to get my license.
Oh.
We had a company doing it for us.
Anyone else?
Oh, yeah. So just to give you a little heads up on the sewer too, by the way, it's really it's not tax related at all. The only people that pay for that are people that use that. So although they're taxpayers, it's not tax money that pays for that sewer. So you'll see I put trees around there and stuff. That was requested by people that live down there. They paid for that. None of you guys, unless you live down there, pay for that.
Okay.
I suppose the school pays, and we all pay for that, but more or less, it's not like everything else in town.
Okay.
We take the bill and divide it amongst the users.
Okay.
Kind of unique, I guess. And in the water department, the only increase I had was just for water testing. State's doing more and more testing. There isn't any list that they give out at the beginning of the year telling you what you're gonna do. This is my 3rd year doing it. Every year, every quarter we get a little bag, a couple bottles in it, and this year I got a huge red cooler. It was like $2,000 to
Weare
test
said
that
that.
one. I didn't know it was coming. Courier dropped it off and said, "Here you go." So we overspent that line by quite a bit, so I want to put enough in there because every time they find some new polluted ground in the state, they have another test that we have to test first. We test this building and the daycare across the street, or across the parking lot. That's it for my budget.
Any questions on the budget? Ready for the warrant articles?
If you'd like, we could start with a couple that I would consider to be easy. Might be surprised. Unless you have a different order, Lori?
It's your show.
Why don't we start with the bridge construction reserve fund? So it reads, shall the town raise and appropriate the sum of $105,000 to be added to the previous established bridge improvement maintenance trust fund for the purpose of future bridge repairs intended for River, Lowell, and Old Francistown roads. So what this is the state does an 80-20 funding on red listed bridges. Them picking up 80%, us picking up 20%. When they say it's your turn, you have to have the money. And so if they were to call me next month and tell me that they bumped somebody and we could do Lowell Road, and I said, well, geez, I gotta go ask the town, then you get bumped down the line 5 years. And that happens all the time in many towns. So 3 years ago, we started this. I think this is year 3 of 4. When it's done, it'll be enough money to do all 3 of those programs whenever they come up. Providing prices to do them don't triple.
But
those
in
are
the
pretty
meantime,
good.
these bridges are fine to go on?
Yeah, they're inspected every year by the state, so. Bridges are a terrible thing because they're expensive. The one nice thing is the state inspects them, so it kinda alleviates the responsibility off us, so to speak, but, River Road's gonna be the big deal when we do it, but anyway, this will give us enough money to do it. To do our 20% match.
Go ahead, Greg.
On the bridge on River Road, that's
Yes.
been done, what, 17, 18 years ago?
Yep.
There's places you can put your fist through it. What's the gross vehicle weight to go over that bridge that's allowed right now as it sits?
It's fully rated right now.
So they can come over there at 100,000, 115,000 with a triaxle dump trailer loaded?
Well, I'm 115, but they can come over. It's fully rated right at the moment.
Is it
That's the
split?
problem with that bridge. That's the only fully rated bridge on that road. So, if you were to permit something crazy, 150,000 pound load, that's the only legal bridge. Such as when we did Deer Haven Road, they had to move the reclaimer in, the big rototiller grinds the road up. When you permit a piece of equipment like that, you have to call the state, and the state draws your map out how you drive. They won't allow you to cheat and go across the underrated bridge. And that's the only bridge on that road. It's a big problem. We need to fix it. And it's gonna be a big problem while we fix it, so. Maybe I'll die of illness before that happens, I don't know. Anyway, but I don't know if they'd let an overload or not, but it's fully rated right now for legal
This
loads.
is a fleet out of, halfway to the seacoast there that's hauling out of there 3 or 4 times. Runs a day per 2 or 3 trucks,
Right.
so that's a lot
It's
of
legal
abuse.
for a or for a 3-axle, for a legal load.
Are they got enough distance between the front axle and the rearmost axle? To beach the bridge for me? There's a
Oh, I know
factor
there
as
is, and
well.
I don't
You
know.
know as well as I
Yeah,
do.
yeah, I don't know about all that. I know when you go register a truck, all they do is ask you how many axles you got, and that's the GVW they give you, so. Other than that, I don't know. Every truck's different length. And
Any other questions?
Well, 10-wheeler's kind of the next one on my list. I did say the day I started, you'd hear me ask for a truck every year. Our fleet is getting extremely aged. We did good for a number of years getting a truck every year, and then we went in pretty good spell not getting nothing, and we're back to where we started 15 years ago. So we have 11 big trucks and 2 little ones. A truck 10 years, 11 years old is getting to the point of needing more maintenance and being broke down so you're not efficient than it's worth. And you really ought to be trading one a year. We're not even to that point of having that discussion yet because I'm still trying to trade stuff that is way beyond that 10-year time. So
Do we have everybody up and running right now?
not really.
Okay.
Both of my 45s have been down for 2 weeks, my little trucks. But I've been plowing with my pickup. We haven't had a lot of snow to plow, so, but the big trucks have been having to pick up salt in the parking lots after their shift's over, or after their route's done, I'm sorry. Shift ain't over till I tell them it is. And then, so no, there's always something, and they're just going, you know. You come look at my plowing wings and stuff, it's just terrible. But so this is to replace an 02 International with 11,000 hours on it. When I did this paper, it's over that now by quite a bit because I did this hours a couple months ago and we ran them pretty steady. So it's pushing closer to 10.2. And just, you know, having a hard life and hauling salt for a living is what gets the best of them. You know, it really is. 11,000 hours on a truck that's done nothing but haul salt its whole life is a lot. You know, it'd probably be all right for sell it and, you know, to an old farmer and haul a load of manure once a month. Sure, it's not completely junk, but to rely on it, it's just, I don't have one spare truck. I would like to eventually have one of these and ask you guys, just keep it for a spare. Next year I'll trade it. Won't trade it this year. You know, I even thought about doing that this year. we don't have a spare truck. So when it's down, that's a 3-hour route that everyone else has to pick up. And I've had times already this year and many last year, I had up to 4 trucks down at once. And I have 1 mechanic, so he only do, and then his route's down, so. So same story I told you guys last year, same money. I'm at looking to, those little short 10-wheelers have more than proven themselves to myself and my mechanic and the drivers. They're just a little bigger than the 6-wheelers. They're not giant. I have 2 big 10-wheelers with 14-foot bodies. These have 12-foot bodies. The 6-wheelers have 10-foot long bodies, so you're only adding an extra 2 feet to the truck, so it's not much harder to turn around in a turnaround. You don't put that much more dirt on it, but you do enough more to make a difference on helping out on the way back from your sand route. You get that whole extra set of axles to haul that material around and not, we haven't had one broke, so this is, I have 3 of these little ones so far. One's a 2008. Have not had 1 broken wheel and 1 broken spring on any of them. And them 6-wheelers, them springs are in there with Velcro because they're always broke. They're right upside down. So they're really great. The 2 big 10-wheelers, I'll ask to replace them with big 10-wheelers when the time comes, but we don't need a whole fleet of them. So I think they're great trucks, and so that's why I'm going to continue to ask for 10-wheelers. I think, you know, if we get forced to keep them 10, 11, 12 years, again, that may have a fewer repairs. So they have the same transmissions, basically the same motor, the same tires and wheels as everything else, so as the 6-wheelers. So they're really not much more money to buy. Maybe $10,000 to $15,000 more to go from a 6-wheeler to a 10. So for the money, they're no-brainer in my opinion. So.
And is this gonna be for new plow and everything too?
Yes,
on that
all
side?
equipped.
All
yep.
dressed?
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah, with the internal built spreader.
yes. Had great luck with those. A lot of people have the misunderstanding those all-season bodies aren't as good as a normal dump body that you see a local contractor have. Well, truth is, they're probably 10 times better. They're the ones that I've been getting, these 12-footers, they're made out of hard ox steel, which is all 100% virgin steel at a rating AR 450. So it's the strongest that a normal person can buy. And it's all virgin, so there's no recycled Toyotas that already have rust built into them or nothing. It's very, very good steel. And I have some stainless ones too, which in the salt hauling business, that's nice also. So they're, matter of fact, way better than your average dump body you see going down the road. So, and in the body, that's when there's a chain in the body, and this one side comes up and dumps the sand on, and you put your side back down. When you get back to the shed, you just dump out what you got left, and you're all done for the night. If you want to go haul gravel the next day, you just simply jump up in the body, pull 1 pin, door falls down over your chain, and you're ready to go to work. So. And we've been fortunate to get all the same body, so all my parts are the same and everything. Unless they doubled in price, I would argue to stay with the same company, but it does go out to bid. Is there any questions on that? I got one. I just hate the taste of the stupid things. Well, I guess I'll talk about the skid steer. I know I get funny looks about this. I'm still. I don't know why, to be honest with you. I know 5 years ago it was asked for, so in my opinion, I've made it go another half a decade. It's just not reliable. Always something stupid's broke down on it. It's got almost 6,000 hours, which for a mini piece of equipment, that's quite a bit. And you get up to a giant loader or something, sure you can get 20,000 hours on a skid steer. And again, it would be fine for a farmer that wants to clean his stall out once a week, but it runs, you guys see how much it runs up at the dump. And this is the transfer station. Although I'm the public works director, it's a different department. It's like fire and police are different, transfer station and highway is different. This is almost entirely for recycling. And all the recycling money we do get, which we have gotten a lot of money, there was, when things were real high, you know, we pulling in over 100 grand a year in recycling. It always goes back to the taxpayers. So you guys have gotten way over, us, I'm a taxpayer, you've gotten way over $1 million back since that skid steer's been bought. Just asking for 50 grand to buy another one. You know, it's like the ambulance, you know, we take money from the billing to replace it when we need a new one. This is really no different other than we don't take any recycling money for when I need to buy something new. Kind of wish we did, but we don't. I had to rent one the last 2 weeks. It was $1,200 a week to rent one of them little things. So that's crazy. I almost choked. I said, how much? So I looked around, and that's what they are. So you get a monthly rate, a couple $100 cheaper, but still way over $3 grand a month to rent one of them. So,
Benji?
yes.
Gary Wilson on Center Road's got one for sale. I don't know how good it is or anything.
I don't either. I see a hit out around the back.
It's got a sign on it the last couple of days.
I want to try every single one they make out there. One thing I want to look at, and I caution even mentioning it, because if I don't like it, I'm not going to buy it, but I'm really curious in looking into one of them that you get out like a car. There's two companies that make a skid steer. Instead of opening the front door and crawling out over the bucket, you get out like a car. I've heard a lot of bad things about them, about the pins and the bushings, but I'm not doing dirt work with it. I'm loading cardboard bales. So I'm interested in looking at it. Because when this one broke down, my operator was stuck in it for an hour. It's wintertime, so
Couldn't get out.
well, Bill weren't very happy about that.
Could not get out of it.
And it's hard, and a slip hazard. So I'm not saying we're going to buy one of them, but I want to try one of them in the worst way. JCB and Volvo both make them.
The lifts were just in the air.
It'd be a wheeled machine. If you guys saw the one that I rented, it was tracked. It's because what they had, first of all. Second of all, you can't rent one as foam-filled tires. So if I'd have got one pneumatic tire, sure as heck, I'd have got a flat tire. So I got a track machine, but I think for what we do up there, although I'm a fan of track machines, I'll get a wheeled machine, foam-fill the tires, I think. So. That'll come with new set of forks, new bucket, and probably, if there's enough money, they make a dustpan, they call for it. It's a little bucket with a street sweeper on it, sweeps into it, and then you dump it. Be great for cleaning up around there. For the money, all I gotta do is save 2 of my tires on my demolition trailer, and I'm just about paid for it. You could bring it out here, like this year, because my little truck's been broke down. I haven't had to salt a lot. There's been a lot of salt and sand put in the parking lots. I could use it to pick that. There's many uses for it. They're not a lot of money, so them be the 3 little attachments I got for it, probably.
What will you do with the old one?
Trade it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Laurie?
One fork's about that much shorter than the other one.
Donna?
Benji,
Yes.
have you considered leasing it or checking into leasing one, and what's the difference?
I could look into it. Usually the difference with a lease is A, you have a interest payment,
That's true.
and B, like the grader, when I ask for something new, selectmen and you guys and everybody tell me, you still got a payment over here to pay for. So. But I'd be more than happy to look into it if you wanted me to. What we found out with
Curiosity.
what we found out with the backhoe, it basically came down to you have an interest payment along with the loan.
Bill?
Is it a fair statement to say that the plow truck is more important? I'm not saying we're cutting the twins here, but the plow truck is more important than the,
It's the most
It's
important for my highway, yeah.
that's, I did say it's more important. That's what I wanted to hear.
Most important for the transfer.
Well, the only other thing
I
I saw
know what
was-
you're asking.
No, the only other thing I saw was, what's good, the good news is, in your proposed budget, you got 10,000 for transfer station equipment maintenance, and you only spent 3,800 last year, so when it does break down,
So far, I spent
You bid-
24 in 2019, though.
oh, okay.
'Cause I-
For the lead, that's
I
right.
don't have anywhere to
Yeah,
pull
that's a
rental
1,200,
out of.
1,200, yeah, you're right, yeah, okay.
I was lucky nothing broke there, but could. You know, what I'm trying to do is keep keep the heart monitor as flat as possible. Last year, I asked for the bridge and a 10-wheeler and a backhoe. This year I'm asking for, in road reconstruction. This year I'm asking for the bridge, a 10-wheeler, and a skid steer. Next year, if you look at my replacement, I'm asking for a 10-wheeler and another little truck. My 4500, it's been broke down for a month. So if we keep kicking the can down, I'm going to kind of build up, and I'm going to need 5 or 6 things all in 1 year. So it's important to me. I don't have to come in and ask, because I know for sure I won't get them then, but then I will be without something. Them little trucks are very important. Couldn't coal patch last week. I had to send the backhoe down to River Road, because I had a bad one down at the far end that couldn't wait with a coal patch in the front bucket, because both my little trucks were broke down. And I had big trucks that were broke down in the storm coming, so that was more important for a mechanic to work on them and the little trucks not get fixed. So next year I really need that little truck. So I'm sure you won't give me the little truck, the 10-wheeler, and the skid steer next year. So
Especially if the
That's a
ro-
good thought process.
especially if the
Benji.
road bound passes.
Yeah.
is any other questions on it?
The skid steer, how long have you been using it then? 2005?
05. I was 14 years old.
And how much money have you taken in recyclables?
Well, I don't know, way over $1 million. We used to get $100,000 a year.
You took in $80,000 this year.
What's that?
You took in $80,000 this past
Okay,
year.
and this was a terrible year for money. My last load of aluminum cans went out at 38 cents. They usually average 50. So take in $80,000 at that price, and metal's only bringing 100 a ton,
Yes.
and it used to bring 300 a ton. So this is as low as you've seen recycling in 10 years. So taking in millions, it's a couple. So if we were like other departments that kept some of it, I'd have all the money. So we've just given it back to everyone. That's all.
Good guy.
Yeah, I know, right?
That's a good idea. On to your bigger guns.
Well, I don't know. Go for the raises. The road reconstruction is usually easy, but it's tied in with that bond. So when we talk about the personnel, I like to call it wage increase instead of raise. Same thing. So basics of it all is I'm asking for $1 an hour increase straight across the board for all my hourly employees. It does not include me because I'm salary. The reason is it's hard to get new help and it's hard to get good help. That everyone knows the economy is good right now. I'm starting truck drivers at $16.56 an hour, and my truck drivers have to basically be an equipment operator, because when you're going out plowing snow with all those levers, that's a lot harder than holding the steering wheel. And you can go to Audley or Continental or something and make $20 an hour, and that's all you do is hold the steering wheel. You might have to fuel it up. They grease it, they do everything. My drivers, when they come back tomorrow, we just got off a 36-hour shift. Tomorrow it's gonna be cold. They're gonna all be in the shop greasing their trucks, checking them over. If there's a major problem, they'll let the mechanic know. But there's headlights that are out. They'll be fixing those. Be changing the cutting edges on their plows. That isn't just your average truck driver. You can go be a steering wheel holder for $20 an hour. So I want to work for me and get grubby and pinch your fingers for 16.
Are most of your employees local?
Most. Not all. One from Bosco and one from Bradford. Back, I don't have the years wrote down, but there used to be a cost of living raise in the budget every year back when I started. I started in 2000, I think, 2001. We went 6 years without any raise at all. None. So if you figured an average of 50 cents an hour, pick an easy number to figure, that's $3. Just asking for one of those back, I guess. If we'd have got that $3, we'd be up there in competitive wages. I took a quick surrounding town. Everybody's looking for help. New Boston starting truck drivers 1886. Sunapy's looking for a foreman. He's $25.50 to $36. Mine makes $20, and he's been there a while. Now this is starting pays. Bow's paying starting at 20. Hook set's 1850, truck driver, 1854 to 2550. Town of Henniker starting the truck drivers at 18, I think. They're having such a hard time, they're thinking about combining positions, starting more. Their transfer station attendant is making more than mine. That's been, well, close. And that mine's been there for 10 years. They're starting at 1667 to bale cardboard in Henniker. So, in my opinion, my guys, aren't paid enough, and I've heard the term double dipping because I'm at, I want them to get the 3% or whatever we agree on too. I don't really feel that it is, because I'm looking to get the wage up there so I can keep them. I got a good crew. I've been here a long time. This was one of the better meshing crews I've had, I want to keep them. And when it comes down to it, it's all about the money. Even though some of us realize what benefits are, it's hard when people are offering $20 an hour to go hold a steering wheel, and I'm asking you to stay up all night and be on call all winter. And well, they're on call for nothing almost. We give them $300 a year to stay by their phone from November 15th to April 15th. Get $300 for that. Out of the goodness of our heart.
Bill?
What kind of turnover have you experienced in the last year because of this?
Lost 3 for more money in the last year.
3 out of,
Well, I have 12 highway guys
so you lost a quarter of them.
for money.
Yeah. Have you been able to hire in each of those positions back?
I have. I barely got the last one,
Okay.
but I have. But, I got 2 guys looking, nobody's secret about nothing. I got 2 guys looking into buying their own truck, because I told them the only way to make money in the truck's to sell it, but you can't tell them nothing, but
That's right.
so, or be the mechanic that works on them. But I think it's fair. I really do. I wanted to ask for $2. I said maybe ask for $2 over 2 years. See how this goes. But we lost. When I started, the town paid for 100% in the insurance, and we got a cost of living raise every year. Now we pay 10% of it, and we have to fight to get the cost of living
Right,
raise.
and the whole business climate has changed, so
Yeah.
it makes it hard. Go
When you
ahead,
say you
Keith.
got a cost of living increase every year, did you all say the 3% as well back then?
It was more.
I thought it was
I wasn't the boss.
I thought it was more like 2.5.
It was kind of.
Cost of living, but it's been the full.
Right.
I've never remembered it to be an
It
on
wasn't
that.
put in there. It was always by the warrant article, but then there was like 6 or 7 years we never did a warrant article.
Right.
Oh, you never did the 3% warrant article, for a few years?
Say that again?
You didn't do the 3% article for a few years?
We didn't do it for.
6 years we didn't get.
6, and then there was another,
Must've
little
been
bit
way
of a
back.
wrinkle, the DPW had unionized for a little while.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
they didn't get
Get
it,
that.
because the union didn't pass.
Right, down the pool.
So they were actually out there a little longer than this building was, but we didn't do anything for a while, and then the first year, I think we did the 4% is what I remember, but then we asked them to pay 10% of their insurance, so, you know what I mean, it was.
We actually
it was,
lost.
"Here's some, but I want more back."
Those of us had family plans that first year, and we did that. I lost money. So,
But don't ever get sick without the.
no. I'm telling you, I had a daughter that came out with complications, so I appreciate it.
Remember my name?
I know you were, but there was like, Nick, Joe? No.
The thing is too is something that Benji may not be saying too is right now it's wintertime. What comes with wintertime and snow? Overtime. Okay? So, I'm not saying any of the crew's gonna leave, but when the first paycheck of straight time hits for the summer, in the spring, they may start looking. And when Continental and Pike and all them guys are starting to gear up, they start screaming for drivers at the $20 an hour rate. Some guys are entertained by the money, like Benji said. Also, if you go on Indeed or Craigslist or anything right now, you look up driver positions. There's 3 pages. You can go anywhere you want. You know, I know a couple of our guys have the combination licenses, right?
Half of them.
Half of them do. JP Noonan right now, the fuel hauler for a third shift fuel delivery person is almost $30 an hour.
What is a combination like?
Tractor and trailer.
Okay.
Truck and trailer. Right now, I mean, to drive the plow trucks with just the plow gear, all you need is a truck, commercial license for the truck only. So, I mean, theoretically, those guys could leave and go haul fuel for $30 an hour. I mean, that's a substantial jump. Also, the other thing is, and I'm pretty sure that Selectman Meany can back me on this, is that in 2020, they're changing the CDL rules. And you actually have to, you can't just, because right now, if we hire somebody on and they don't have a CDL, we can train them in-house and bring our vehicle up to the state and have them examined by a state examiner, and they can obtain their CDL like that. In 2020, the rules changed. You now will need to attend a class that costs almost up to $10,000 to get, and you have to have that cert before they'll even entertain you to go test now. So right there, we're already short drivers statewide, and now we're going to be short drivers even more because now you have to pay for the school. So again, I'm not trying to, it's facts out there, So I think this is, a lot of conversation happens of, well, we're Weare, we're not neighboring towns. But again, like Benji said, for the same position where a steering wheel holder, you can go make more money. And some people, that's all that matters, is more money. So.
Any more on this? Go ahead, Benji.
Well, I think I'll go to the regular road reconstruction for the bond. Does that work? Ooh. See, that's why I hate them cough drops. I just bit it in half. God, they're terrible. This is something that's always been asked for and always got voted on. Gets eked up a little bit every year. So I'm still asking for the $480,000 that we always ask for. What road reconstruction, what probably many of you might not know, it doesn't just pay for that one road a year that you see us pave. It does the gravel crushing, does the calcium chloride, does the it does everything but coal patch. I think coal patch and signs the only thing in my budget that relate to roads. It does everything else. When you purchase culverts, when you buy under drain, I probably could sit here for 3 hours and then it was off. But so out of that $480,000, there's easily 100 of it that doesn't go to really rebuilding anything. It's to maintenance. I put 52 of that in my budget, but there's other things too. So if you have more, I have in my budget. I put my budget sheet away, but if you look under guard signs and rails, that's a joke amount. What's in there. So usually when you do a section of guardrail that gets wiped out, that comes out of road reconstruction because there isn't enough money in that to put up 100 feet of guardrail. But so we're still asking for the 400 this year. I had it at 500. We backed it off to 480. I said 400. I backed it back down to 480 where it was last year. I really want it to pass. I hope to kind of sell my bond here, the next conversation, but it's very important. We need it. I mean, the roads are your biggest infrastructure in this town, and if you don't believe me, come answer my phone after a rainstorm, a snowstorm. You don't think people don't want good roads, so that's enough to do about 1 mile of road, redo 1 mile of road. Have almost 80 miles of them. So.
Comments? I guess we're going to the big warrant article.
All right. So put a lot of work into evaluating all the paved roads. Myself and Jack Dearborn actually rode every one of them. I have a counter in my pickup, measured them by the foot. I gave my estimate of what condition they were, rated them 5 positions. good poor somewhere, 3 categories of intermediate. So when we're putting this all together, back up kind of just a second. To begin with, I was going to ask for 750. We had a real big outreach for more road maintenance this year, bigger than since I've worked here. We had one whole community come in and explain their interest for wanting their road fixed. So I felt that this was the year to maybe try to do something a little bigger than anybody else has done, because I felt that I had the townspeople's support for it. So I first thought I'd throw 750 out there, but that's such a jump. I don't want the road reconstruction to fail. Be in huge trouble. So went back to the 480, 500 to start with, back down to 480, and we looked at doing a bond. What you'd get with the bond was you'd be able to, the biggest thing, you'd be able to buy pavement at today's prices. We all know things go up. Wasn't too many years ago, pavement was $45 a ton, now it's $65 a ton. So we bought it at today's rate instead of a little bit. 10 years from now, I'm sure it'll go up another $20 a ton. So what this bond is intended for, and I really wish more people could have intended the form we had on paved road maintenance, because that was explained far better than I can do it. But it's important to keep a good road good. We get my 480 and I go do a piece of road and it's beautiful, and then we never look at it again until it's time to grind it up and do it again. And it's just a shame. You should be doing something every few years to keep that good road good. It's like you do your house, you know. We try not to let the house fall in when we build a new house. Try to paint it or do upkeep to it, put new roofs on it. We don't do that with roads in this town, because there's not the money to, not because nobody wants to, but there's just not the money to. So the $2.5 million would basically go to put some preservation in roads that are worth preserving. I'm not going to go overlay a Bogue Road or a Pine Hill Road, because it'd be a waste of money. Okay. We would say wait till we had money to grind those and fix those properly. But we might put an overlay on a Thorndike or the rest of Reservoir Drive. So in the last 3 years since I've been here, I've been taking a little bit of my money and trying to do preservations on roads that I know have a good base. One of them is Reservoir Drive. It's a high traveled road. We have a town park up there. I've put an overlay on that. It's nice smooth pavement again. It saved a ton of coal patching, and it's probably given that road another 10 to 12 years of life out of it. We didn't wait till we had to grind it up and put 250,000 a mile in it. I did the same thing on the north end Mile River Road. We knew it was good. It was getting close to 20 years old. Put an inch of pavement over it. One thing they do in almost everywhere but here is chip coating. I did a chip coat on Hodgen Road. I think it's a terrific product. My knowledge, first time we've done it in Weare. What they do is they put a layer of oil down and they put rock chip on it, and that gives a wearing course for people's tires to ride on. And that was more of a glorified chip coat. That had fiberglass stuff mixed in with it too to give it some structure. But they tell me that should give us another 8 years on that road. So those are the types of products I want to do to try to extend the life of roads that are still decent. And there's many roads. I have them all listed and everything. We won't go over them all tonight, but so I do have a more or less a plan for that, where that money would go. And it's trying to do something, try to do something different and new. We always, that's what we've always done. But I'm the one that gets the phone calls and hears of what people want. I believe I get probably the truest and fairest feel of what the overall town wants as far as their roads, because I'm the guy they call when they're not happy about it. And it's more than you think. And we just will never get around them at $480,000 a year. There's not enough money in that to do any preservations. The reason I was able to do as much this year as I did was because I had that 236 that the state gave to all the towns. I held it from the year before because I didn't have a good plan for it, so I didn't want to just waste it. So I spent a year, put a plan together, and I put together a big paving project this year, which brought my paving prices down.
Okay.
I talked to surrounding towns. We got, out of any town that I know, not saying all towns, any town that I know the people at, we got the best pavement prices around. I got $60 a ton laid in place. Because I had $500,000 to give them. It makes a big difference. I worked over in Deering for a short time. I only had $100 to give to them. I paid $74 a ton. So it makes a difference on how much money how big of a bag you got.
Bill made a suggestion to you,
Yep.
and you and I have had a conversation, which anybody on this committee is allowed to have private conversations.
Mhm.
I hear what you're saying. I sincerely hope you take Bill's suggestion and you hear my conversation. You've got almost a third of the town on gravel dirt roads, and you really need those people on board. That's very important for you to get this through. I hear what you're saying, and I just want to emphasize everything that we can do to make that happen. We may have to think about that to see if you need that driver to give you the best chance at success.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just a comment
Mm-hmm.
that I would make. Anybody else, Tom?
Just a comment, not specific, but Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission meetings once a month usually have speakers. And in November, the commissioner and deputy commissioner of the DOT was there to speak, and the subject was road reconstruction. And basically, they said the state can't afford reconstruction.
Mm-hmm.
So their whole emphasis is on preservation. And that's why you see mostly shim and overlays on the roads, because they simply can't afford that $200,000 a mile for reconstruction. It just point of information, really, that it's not an issue that's unique to Weare. It's a statewide problem. You got to catch them while they're good, because you can't afford to rebuild them.
Can I just clarify what you just said? So you're agreeing with Bill that they should remove the $42,000 from the?
And put it
Budget,
back
put it-
in. You give people
No,
a vested
I agree.
interest
I think you take
in.
the 15,000 of glass out, put it back too, but also make your town's budget look a lot better.
That's our, three of us, it's up to everybody else, but certainly input is important at this level for success.
There's also maybe a middle ground. I know you want to establish that line in the budget. So maybe put something in there so that you establish the line in the budget for that.
Establish a line, but you could, I mean, what's more important this year, I guess, is our point.
Yeah, you can always put the line in later, but,
Yeah.
go ahead, Chris.
There's a little concern there, because if the article failed
Yes.
and all of that money was in the article, then because you're already borrowing from lines, you wouldn't have much maneuverability.
That, if the article were to
The
fail,
article won't fail. The article you're talking about, I assume, is the regular road construction article, right?
Yeah.
correct,
Well, that-
and
Which
it's
would never
already
fail.
there.
Never.
Oh, I thought it was the bond article, sorry.
If the bond article fails and we were to pull what he's proposing to put in to the proposed budget, the 42,000, if he put that back into his bond article, if that failed, the, no, he'd have to put it back in.
Put it back in the road
If the operating budget fails, then it goes back into road reconstruction, probably, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
so it would be
It's not the
there.
bond, the bond is the whole.
In the road reconstruction. Got it.
But wasn't there talk about the $500,000 is kind of the limit for the town to say yes to the road reconstruction?
That's
No,
a-
no-
that's a-
nobody's
that's
there
a-
to ask.
Nobody knows.
Doesn't change the
You-
number.
The vote on it in the 480 level, and it used to be about considerably less, I mean, it
450.
marched up to about, 450, and then you pushed it up to 480, but it didn't change the vote, it's between 70 and 80%.
So we've
on
never
passage.
asked for over 500,000.
No.
No,
Never asked them before.
He's not suggesting doing that.
480 is the top limit with that.
and this article, has that article ever tanked?
No, not since I've been here, but I mean, it's passed
So the town's
easily.
history is to pass that
The
480
Right.
thing.
70 to 80%.
It's one reason we've
pass it.
opted to, because I was very serious about going for 750. That was one of two big reasons we went back this way. One was we don't want it to fail, because I believe we need a minimum of 750 to maintain them. Hope to be there someday. But I don't want it to fail, first of all. And second of all, buying this maintenance material, which mainly would be pavement and a little bit of chip coat, you're gonna get a better deal buying it at today's price than you are 10 years from now. I could
Looking
do
at your
a,
ability to sell this, and
and it's all contracted labor too, by the way, maybe some flaggers, but these would be roads that would just take overlays or chip coatings, and the companies come in and do it for us. So it'd be no additional work for us. I would still go do my mile of road reconstruction with my crew. Maybe the days the pavers show up, I'd give them some flaggers, but other than that, it's all, the chip coating and the paving's all the contractor, so,
And you can get it done in a year or two, correct?
Yes.
So it'll have the effect immediately?
absolutely, yes.
All right.
Go ahead, Donna.
Benji, how much did you spend on Hodgson Road for that chip?
50,000.
Okay, just to give people idea, how much 50,000 would go if you drive the road to see?
Yeah, so go look at Hodgson Road, everybody
Yeah.
know where it is?
No.
And the Flanders go left.
Yeah, go up the end of this road, take a left. And that was, like I said, so if that was just if I took a little bit better road, say Reservoir that I paved last year and this year, and I were to chip coat that next year, I could do an average, traditional chip coat, which they just put down oil and chip. That road would have been 30,000. I spent another 20 to put the shredded fiberglass in it because it probably should have been chip coated 3 years ago. There's some alligator
Okay.
cracking in it.
All right.
That's like new.
Yeah.
That's 7,000 feet long too, by the way, so that's
So I thought.
a little over a mile of road for $50,000 versus a mile of road costs
just think-
$250 to
I
reconstruct.
just think people need to get out and look at these roads that you're talking about and to help save the money for the budget.
And not that this plays into it, but I don't know how many of you are very, very familiar with Hodgson Road, but there's one corner, there's a big culvert, that every time it clouds up, there's a car in that culvert. And so far, since we put that chip on it, it has better traction. It hasn't been, it really does give you
Does
much
it?
better traction, yeah, it sure does.
Wow.
Buy better tires.
As long as you don't know the car.
Tom?
Just that same subject, that has packed down. I don't know if it's just because it's winter and it's frozen in place, but when I went over it recently, it didn't have the loose stuff that was over it for the first few months.
Well, and it really was only the first couple days, but it did keep pulling a little bit up. So the biggest problem with it is you got to let it roll in for a couple days before they sweep it. And the motorcycle don't like it. We put up signs and stuff. There's always somebody that goes around it and don't pay attention. But like you say, now it's all done. So for that 50,000, they come and did it, and they came in with a professional street sweeper that picked up the loose stuff twice. Because they called me a week after they swept it. They said, "How do you like it, Benji?" I said, "It's all right, but the corners kind of still got some loose stone." Next day, I had a street sweeper at my shop.
Nice.
And not that it's of any value, but we got 2 10-wheel loads of loose chip, so I can mix it in my winter sand. So I think it's a good deal. But anyways, not to get too far off track, that's the type of thing that the $2.5 million bond go for. More pavement than chip, but I'd love to put a chip coat on a Reservoir Drive 2 years after I pave it. It's just a wearing course. Keeps the water from getting down into them cracks. It seals the cracks up. And then shims and overlays. That's what the bond would be spent on.
Anything else? Bill, did you have anything?
No.
Are you out of warrant articles?
Got the one.
I think I am.
You got the one, well, it's still just the one that creates a capital reserve fund for you.
Oh, yeah,
I think there's one in there.
there is.
Skipping that purpose is so easy.
All right, yeah, it's kind of the selectmen's article. I think they mentioned it, but I'll be more than happy to,
okay.
I'll be more than happy to give you 2 seconds of why I asked for it.
They blame you, that's why.
Okay. So the entire reason I would like to have this put into a fund is because right now, I have to get that money all spent by December 31st or I lose it, and it's voted on just for roads. So December 30th, I'm usually scrambling to try to PO $20,000 to $30,000 worth of money, which is usually I'm plowing snow then. And you might ask, well, why don't you spend it before? Well, you never know what's going to happen. Late November, I had a catastrophic failure of a not a very expensive culvert, but I had a $20,000 failure on Colby Road on a Saturday in November, which you wouldn't expect. So if I'd have spent that all in September, what we would have done. So it's nice to have that money in case need it. So I never have more than 30,000 left over, but it's kind of hard to go get 3 prices and come to the selectmen and do all that in a day. So if you could just put that in a fund, then you'd have it, you know. Maybe years down the road, you'd have a small road job one year and save half the money to do a big one the next year. I don't know. It's not really my biggest reasoning for it, but it's too bad to have to send money back that everybody votes on just for roads. I don't think anybody ever votes on road reconstruction to go buy tires with, right? You want it to road.
The other thing too is him having 20 or 30,000 holding it, is that he doesn't have any more money to work with come January, February, and March until your articles pass.
Right.
So if something that major happens in those first 3 months, if he doesn't have a little chunk there left,
Can they not encumber it?
You have to have a specific purpose.
Yeah.
You know, like you're going to buy a
I have to
specific
buy
thing.
gravel or I have to do
Okay,
something.
and that you can encumber.
Huh?
You can encumber that amount.
I can do it something like that, but if a road were to wash out in March, then I wouldn't have the money to buy the culvert or whatever. That culvert on Colby Road was something I didn't have in my pit, so I had to go buy it. I had to go buy head blocks to build the walls, and so that's just an example. But I mean,
So if that happened in February and you didn't have this fund set up, what would you do?
I don't know.
Okay, that's basically the answer, okay.
I mean, I suppose, right? You can't leave the road closed. I'd have to do it and steal it out of fuel or something, and my budget would be over. But that ain't how you're supposed to do it.
It's a bottom line budget, so they pull from one
No,
area.
But
Well, I
road
realize that. I'm
road
just
reconstruction
asking.
ain't part of the
Right.
budget, so it ain't supposed to, you know.
Right.
That would be one reason I would like to eventually get a maintenance line in the budget, you know. But anyways, I'll go back on other subjects. So that's the reason I asked the selectmen to ask for that, put that in the fund. It doesn't cost any money. I think it's a wise thing to do.
Any comments, any other questions for Benji? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Go home and feel better.
I will, thank you.
You're doing a good job too, Benji.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief Kelly,
No, it's all right.
do you want to start with your budget first?
Whichever you want.
It's up to you. It's your show.
Then if you would turn to page 5 of 12 in the budget handout. Do you have a preference on how you'd like to proceed?
I think just go right down where anytime you have changes would help a lot.
Okay. Right at the top, you get the police chief salary. That's a contractual change. And I'll try to remember not to use the town budget line number and rather the far left number. So in line 228, full-time officer salary, that change there is due to collective bargaining. Police overtime, that's line 233.
Can we back up 1 second? Would that be okay?
Sure.
Police part-time secretary wages. I understand that that is in the collective bargaining. I have read that. But we are not currently, to my understanding, looking for one. And at this point, we have not expended any of this. Can we not, would it be possible to reduce this?
That's, I think, something we'd have to ask legal counsel relative to
Because
how
I
it
checked
impacts
on the
collective bargaining.
contract.
Yep.
So, and I checked with the union attorney. So, again, you can check with counsel, but I know that they have to have a placeholder for it. And all I'm asking is, since we're not looking for it, if it's possible, that would be something I would suggest.
Sean, we can look.
Okay.
We can look.
Thank you.
So back down to line 233, overtime. That's, the 115 is actually $5,000 under what it was funded for in 2012. At some point between 2012 and 2014, it was pushed back to $100,000, and that between covering leave of all types, the number of vacancies that we've had over the past couple of years, training needs and so forth and so on, we've exceeded that $100,000, if I recall correctly, just about every single year, although we were close in 2014. So that's why the change there.
Okay.
Stuff, Lori, things like on line 237, Medicare. Do you want to hear from me on that?
No, you don't have any control of Medicare.
Thank you very much. That will
Be nice if you
certainly
could, but-
speed things along.
FICA, you don't have any control over.
Yep, New Hampshire retirement system, where you see a big jump, there's nothing I can do there.
What about 235, where it was blank before?
I'm sorry. Vacation, bonus accruals.
Bonus accruals?
I think I'm going to have to defer to Beth and Naomi on that. I believe that is related to collective bargaining as well. But frankly, I'm not sure.
There's no,
No, it's related to you resigning.
Okay,
There's
it's
accruals that
related to me.
Accruals, I explained the accruals the other night. Accruals that will have to be paid out.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Okay, well, there you have it. Now imagine my pleasant surprise. Okay, so
Does that include the FICA and Medicare?
I don't know how to answer you, Lori. Again, New Hampshire retirement system, we have no control over that. That's established for us. Line 242, prosecutor services, that difference there is contractual. Dispatch at line 244, that's also contractual.
Is that the same with 239? That's contractual as well?
Let me go back up to it.
Sorry.
No, full-time officers change. That's the New Hampshire retirement system.
Okay.
That's changes that have come from that because of what the town has to participate. Let's see, where was I? Thank you. So line 244 dispatch was contractual.
Are we out of Goffstown?
Yes, ma'am, we are.
Same as fire, both went, that's why both of them went up.
Training, police training, I've asked for a $3,000 increase there. I think probably the best way for me to describe that is that this is, we have had a remarkable run of recruitment and selection. We've brought in some really talented young people to be our next generations of police officers. We've invested them to the extent that we've sent them to the police academy. We've taught them how to be police officers in our community. We need to continue to train them so that our police officers feel enthusiastic about being our police officers.
Bill, did you have something?
It's,
Can I interrupt, just for a second? I just wanted to go back to one before we get too far. Now, we left off at training, I think, right? But,
Yes.
so we could find our spot again.
Gotcha, I got my down there.
Okay. The part-time officer wages, we have one part-time officer now?
yes, that's true.
Did he just come on recently with, last year it was just not, hardly anything was spent on it?
Right, this is an officer that left the Weare Police Department to go to a police department half the size for more money. And
Okay.
I think it's because he likes me so much, he decided to stay as a part-timer.
Or he just wanted to make more money for his family?
That could be it too.
And now you're leaving.
Yeah, no, I'm leaving.
But you expect just one this year, or are you gonna try, will you, before you leave, are you gonna try to hire more part-time officers? What's the?
Yeah, that's an
'cause
interesting.
at one time you had said you didn't want part-time officers. I remember you just wanted to grow your own, train them, and have a tight force.
Yeah,
But that has changed.
well, that's not entirely accurate. I would have liked to have had a cadre of full-time certified part-time officers to fill in as, on a per diem basis, as was needed. And that was reflected in, frankly, it was reflected in the collective bargaining negotiations 2.5 years ago, and it's now reflected in the agreement that they have. The officer that left us full-time and has remained on part-time, it meets that criteria. I would love to find another full-time person between now and April to fill out that reserve officer spot, because that would give us an opportunity to train them the way we have things done here in Weare in time for our busiest season. The likelihood of that happening is fairly remote.
Okay, so if you move forward with one part-time officer for the year, you're anticipating it would be $10,500 he's gonna get paid this year? That's what's in the proposed budget.
I think that's for two.
Yep, that's 10,500 is the total amount anticipated to be paid out to whomever is on staff at the time. What-
It's for two, or it's for, I heard it's two back there, and you
No.
have one, no.
It's $10,000,
Can we move the
$10,500 in the
phones,
part-time
please?
reserve officer fund, right? So, or part-time officer line. So if we have two or we have 50, you still have $10,500 to spend, that's it.
Well, you expect that you're gonna spend that. Last year it was, I don't know how long the part-timer you have has been on board, but
Since December,
Yep,
okay, so he just started in December?
yes.
yep.
Okay,
And it's not started,
Okay.
he's changed his status.
right. Okay, I'll move on.
All right, thank you. Back down the line, 5:30. Going past that, unless there's any questions about that.
I do want to go back to police training.
Yep.
You are leaving us.
Mhm.
And we do not know who we are getting, when we are getting them, what they want, he, she, whoever. We don't know what the game plan is. And correct me if I'm wrong, we hired number 12 in August, September. Number 12 left in December 1st. We now have that
No, he
person.
was like number 9 or 10.
Okay, so we're down to 9?
I'm just
No, no.
being smart, you know what.
No, but what I'm saying is we're not at a full complement of people.
We were until he left in December.
Right, which means we had them for what, 3 months? And so now we're down to 11. No,
The confusion is just that it's not,
It's not the
he's
guy
not the last
who's
one
hired.
hired.
The
He was
last one
hired.
hired
over-
is not the one that left.
but the fact of the matter is, we're not at 12.
Right. Just as-
No matter who left and how got there, we're at 11. And we have somebody new, we don't know who it is, when they're going to be hired at this point, because I don't know how that's been laid out yet. At this point, we haven't had this position filled, positions, we haven't done that. And we are down a full-time officer. Does it make sense to, I'm just asking, to assume that we're going to go for this, not knowing what the new person wants?
Well, I suppose the alternative is to put it to where I would have liked to have put it, which is, 18 to 20,000, but 15 is kind of a negotiated position.
My understanding, may I?
Sure.
Is that a good chunk of that is to improve the leadership skills of your leadership group, not to train the new patrolman as he comes in, because that goes through the state program. So like your sergeants and your lieutenant and so forth to
It's a
keep
fairly,
them
yes and no.
ongoing.
It's a fairly even split because of, the police academy has less and less funding as things go along. The number of offerings that they have for new or midterm police officers is fewer than ever before. Sometimes we just simply can't send them because of where the training might fit into our schedule. And it's not a good time. If we have a comprehensive training that, we feel like we must spend money to send somebody to, we will during the summer months, but we try not to do that because it's so busy. And yet that's when training sometimes occurs. So we have to do a lot of vendor-based training, whereas, 10, 15 years ago, police departments had to do very little vendor-based training because it was all taken care of by the police academy.
So the police academy at that time was providing specialized training as well as the basic recruit?
Yes, significant amounts. And what they didn't offer, they offered training grants for, and they don't do that anymore either.
Donna. Chief, you got ×2 here. Would you consider just do?
I'm sorry, what are you talking about?
The saying the training RWU mid-manager ×2. Does that mean you're for two people?
That's an old copy.
That's the old printout.
Okay, but it's for two? No, just one.
It's for the whole department to train.
That's right.
It's not just
For 1 or 2.
It's not just for 1 or 2, it can be used
That
for any
management they already completed.
Okay. Got it.
Anything else on training? Hearing none, moving right along.
Can I just ask a question? Because I'm
Sure.
just curious. So you're resigning. Can I ask the police chief's salary? Do we have to set it? Or is that what we're expecting a new police chief to want? Because that's in the contract?
That's a question for the Board of Selectmen.
Be negotiated, right?
Why is the transfer?
Yeah, we really haven't talked about, we're just starting the process up as far as the search. So we have not talked about a salary yet as to where we would start even looking at. So I would think obviously he's gonna, take the first few months, but that's, budgeted for 18, but I'm thinking that that other number is an unknown at this point.
At this point, it is, yeah.
All right, I'm just looking at the increase and I was just,
Well, because the other question, we have done this in previous years, and to Megan's point, and I know you haven't discussed it, but it is something, we don't know when this person is coming in. We don't know what salary they're coming in at. We don't know what we're looking for, whether you're doing full or part-time, and that we're not asking for clarification. But these are all variables that have not been discussed in public. I don't even know if you've had that discussion, but we have, on occasion, lowered lines because we aren't going to have somebody for the first 3 or 4 months, and why pad that part of the budget if you're not going to have somebody there. We have done this in the past, and I think it would be wrong if we didn't raise the question because we don't know.
No, and I agree. I mean, it is definitely, like I said, the question to raise. But again, we don't know what compensation is going to be right out of the gate. Like I said,
Tom?
Just to clarify something, Megan, the last year, we were living on a default budget.
no, I realize that, yes.
So that, what you see as an increase wasn't actually that increase.
It's 2 years.
Well,
Pardon me?
no, I realize that. I'm just asking the question because, we're, the contractual is contract with,
Correct.
Chief Kelly, whereas we're gonna get someone new and we're increasing that line item where, we keep saying we don't have money. So I'm just asking the question.
It's
She's,
in line with
she's
what
being
others are
fiscally
asking for this
responsible.
size community. Okay, that would be in line of a full-time for this size community.
Good question.
Ricky, has any discussion been made relative to whether it's gonna be a part-time or a full-time position?
But that, we don't have that discussion
Yeah,
yet?
I think we can have that discussion right now.
Oh, okay.
As of January 1st, the states changed their retirement rules so that any person that is an incumbent in the position, in other words, if I remained your police chief, I could remain your police chief in a part-time capacity for as long as you tolerated me, or I could still stand. However, as of January 1st, any person that takes a job, like I couldn't go to Bo, for instance, right now and be a part-time police chief. They would have to reduce the number of hours to 24 hours a week. And I can tell you, and you know, this has been some of our discussions between the Board of Selectmen and me, you've got to have a full-time police chief here. So you can, I mean, maybe they'll
But this number is.
have a bad batch of bananas or something like that and lose their minds. But my bet is that you're going to have a full-time police chief next.
But this number currently reflects you as part-time, correct?
Yep.
Thank you. That's what I wanted clarification.
Okay.
But there are chiefs, I've done some looking around the area that are in comparable salaries full-time. But that's up to them to wrestle with.
That's their job.
Okay.
Okay, back to training. Are we done with training?
We're trained.
Okay.
256.
I'm sorry?
256 is the.
Yeah, I'm working my way down. I'm there.
Just ahead of you.
Thank you so much. There's a line 256 that you've just heard. Is you see about a $5,000 reduction in
Yes.
in that line, and that is for body-worn BWC body-worn cameras. We've been able to use some 2018 money and purchase with the exception of one unit, what we have an immediate need for. So the 1818 is for the additional unit that we will need in 2019. Computer equipment, that's a big jump from $500 to $2,800. I don't know how old some of the computers are in our building, but I can tell you they run slower than me, and that is fairly substantial. They've got to be replaced. They just simply won't keep up with our technological needs that we have these days. For instance, it's an awful thing, but we've done a number of child pornography cases over the course of 2018 and similarly in 17 and 16, and we had to go out and buy a computer just for that stands alone, it's not connected to the internet, I mean, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And those things have to be replaced periodically. So do the workstations that the officers use, and so do the workstations that are now in the cars. So that line went from 500 to 2,800 out of pure need.
Question? Bill?
No.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead, Jim.
Sorry. That includes the computers in the vehicles, and those are slightly different than your typical laptop that you'd pick up.
Right. This is reflective of my recommendation that we start, and I know this is a pill that's going down sideways, but we've only just put in those laptop computers or the tablets that the town bought in 2013 maybe. This is 2018 marked the first year that they were actually operational. So the first time they were able to put in the car, because before that there was no funding to put them in the car. It was bought the tablets and that was it. So they couldn't be used. So now they're being used. And everybody that's connected to that is saying that's too old, it's too slow, it's got to be replaced. So my recommendation is that we start replacing them at least one a year.
Quick follow-up.
Yes.
So the installation would come out of this that we were missing previously?
Yes. Yeah, it's all part of the big thing. Yes, those tablets. It's fabulous tablets. And, you know, the thing is now that they're installed, the usefulness of them is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. But they're just getting, they're brand new for our use anyway, but they're getting old and slow, and they just can't handle the technology that they're being demanded of.
Chris? Yeah, that was kind of a related question. Should you not replace everything, will your new software be compatible within your building so that your computers can still talk to each other?
If you do one a
Because
year.
I know
Yeah, I'm
there
not
are
sure I understand your question.
Will the programs that you need to run on the new computers be compatible with the old computers so that they can be read backwards on the old computers?
I gotcha. I think. I don't know.
Because I know, because that's a problem that this town has,
Yeah.
that you can't put new software on some of our computers in this town because
Yep.
they can't run it.
Right.
And so,
And so far, our vendor, Spalding Hill, has been pretty good about keeping us abreast of that must go now. And I wish I had a down pat answer for you, Chris. Right now, with the software that we are using for police reporting and for interface here with town hall and so forth, so far, the equipment we have gets by.
right.
But again, every time we have a system upgrade or this, you know, a malware thing that we have to add, it gets slower and slower and slower to the point where you sign on in the morning and you wait 15 minutes to start working. It's enough to drive you nuts. Okay. All right, so that was line 257. Police office supplies, that reduction of $4,000, that was based on what we spent in 2018. We did not have the costs in that line that we anticipated when we were preparing the 2018 budget, and we're trying to pass that on. Photocopier service, that's line 261. That increase is contractual. 263, you're looking at a fairly substantial bump there. That's a calculation based on, well, Beth, correct me if I'm wrong. It's current use in terms of gallons against the anticipated price of gasoline in 2019.
So this is due to all our patrolling officers? Okay, is this due to the cruiser going home to Maine? Okay, that's what I needed to know. Did you have something, Mr. Hippler?
When the selectmen set the fuel price, I say the fuel price, they set the projected fuel price for the town.
Okay.
This year, we did the model a little differently, and we went with the higher numbers so that we didn't end up in a sling. You know, now the town as a municipality does not pay the road use tax, so we get it for a little less, which is always good. But we get for a little less. But again, it varied. You know, we estimated last year, and it was either side of it, but it was more to the plus side than it was the minus side. And in years past, we've been both side 50% of the time. So obviously, as you can see, this number is a considerable jump, but we want to be prepared. And you know, I know when Tom was on the board and when I first got on the board, we started really chiseling away at, because the fuel prices, I mean, that were set aside were substantially higher than where they are now.
Right.
But now we're starting to, obviously, petroleum is a gamble anyways. We all know that when we drive up to the pump, we don't know. So, like I said, it is a substantial jump, but that's how we come up with the calculation.
What was the price that you used for the calculation?
I have it in my book, but it'd take me 5 minutes to find it.
235 from the.
And last year, do you know what we did?
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, we may have extra at the end of the year in those lines, you know, but I'd rather have a little bit there than, you know,
The other way.
be in the red. You know, I'm running on fumes.
So what Ricky was saying, I was at that meeting when they set that, the they were using some form of a calculation in past previous years.
Previously, yes.
And they've come up short. So this year, they're using what the US government is recommended estimated pricing for the year, so.
Well, we were on April.
Anticipated.
Yeah, it was 210. Because they had a default.
We haven't seen that for a while.
Yeah, it was defaulted, so 210 is what we estimated for 2017. We got it again for 2018.
All right, so the next line, 264, vehicle maintenance, repairs, and tires. There's no change there, except in practice. In 2016, we spent roughly $58,000 on vehicle repairs. In 2018, when we had now 4 new vehicles, our repair bill was $17,000, just a little bit less than $17,000. So our repair costs have gone down the price of a car, if that gives you an idea of the value of our fleet at this point. So it was worth bringing up. Police communication equipment, that's a $3,000 some odd dollar jump, which is less than the cost of one portable radio. The radios that the officers carry on their hip are about $4,000 now. And ours were purchased, well, long before I got here. They're probably 10 to 12 years old. If I remember right, and this is a stretch, they were probably purchased as part of a larger grant through the state. That grant no longer exists. Those radios are I don't know how many that you got in the beginning at the start, but we only have 12. And if one of them fails, we have to have a portable radio. So there's your increase on that recommended line there.
I'd like to ask a question. According to 1220 budget, on that date, we still had not expended anything from that line item. Hearing what you're saying, how come we hadn't started replacing anything for that?
Yep. We did not have, we had the number of radios that we needed for the number of people that were here. And we're out of, we have one failure and that's it. Before, when we had vacancies, we had a radio that was sitting there on the shelf that was able to be used. Uniforms and equipment, Beth, I'd have to ask, is that a contractual change, the $2,000?
No, it's for the part-time.
Thank you very much. So the $10,000 is for everything that you see me wearing now, with the exception of the ballistic vest and the equipment, for all of the full-time staff and 2 part-time officers, where we had reached the point where now we were starting to look at transitioning our recruitment and selection to include reserve officers. We needed to bump that up to make sure that we had the monies necessary to uniform and equip the new officers. Ballistic vests, that's down. My recommendation is down this year simply because the shelf life of body armor is 5 years, and the body armor that's currently on people's bodies when we were at full staff there for those 3 months all fell within that limit, and they were not going to have to be replaced in 2019. The $1,760 is the cost of 2 body armors in anticipation of now selecting a full-time police officer for the 1 vacancy and 1 reserve officer. Line 271, union contract, uniform allowance, that's a contractual increase. The uniform maintenance and dry cleaning, that is reflective of actual use. And then the safety and medical gear, that is for really expendables. The NIOSH masks that we wear, the latex or otherwise, whatever they're made of, gloves, the individual first aid kits that we now equip every officer with, the Narcan that we train every officer to use for self-rescue and other officer rescue. And I'm careful to say self-rescue and other officer rescue because we have not had the certification training necessary for us to administer to other people. We still rely on the fire department for that purpose. So that's where those increases come from. Things that, when I first came on the job, you didn't think twice about, and now they're front and center.
Did you expend more than I'm showing? Because it shows you expended $911 on that line item, and you had budgeted $2,000, and you've increased it, but you only spent $900.
Yeah, that money was spent on equipping the 2 new officers that came in. So this is the increase there is for 3 new officers, 2 new officers, the full-time and 1 part-time, equipping them, plus the replacements that have to be done during the course of the year from usage.
When you say the full-time, is that the warrant article full-time, or is that the chief?
That's the vacancy that we have now that John Blake left.
Okay.
So under the uniforms and equipment, does that include are the weapons?
I'm sorry.
Under uniforms and equipment?
Line 269?
Yeah, I'm sorry, line 269.
No, sir, that does not. That's line 267 would also be where we drew any additional firearms that we need to purchase.
Okay. Is everybody carrying the same weapon?
That's a change that came since I've been here. Yeah, when I got here, there was 4 different authorized weapons. Now we carry the same one.
Okay.
How did that get changed?
How did?
I'm not being sarcastic, it's just, when I was here over 30 years ago, we all had the same 686s that the state police had.
Yep.
That way, if we got in a shootout and the trooper backed us up, we could exchange
Yep.
speed loaders and we'd be back in business.
You carried muskets then, didn't you?
Oh, stop it. Don't be sarcastic.
So carrying spinners?
Oh, Bill, I want that in the
understand what your
minutes.
question was.
It's
Well,
not a
we had
budget
6
question.
686 vests.
Yeah.
357s.
Yeah.
We all had the same,
Right.
okay? Full-timers, no, we didn't full-time, chief, sergeant, patrolman,
Yeah.
auxiliaries, all had the same thing. And that was exactly what the state police were carrying.
Yeah.
So if they came in to back us up and we were out, they could throw us a speed loader, we'd be back in business. That was the
Right.
reasoning behind it.
Yep. So at some point, things must have changed here. And so when I got here in 2014, there was this plethora of different pistols that everybody was allowed to carry, and that is not a best practice. So we were able to work with the area Glock representative and get us into all carrying the same weapon all the time.
But they are issued by the department?
Yes, sir, they are.
Okay, thank you.
That gets you where you needed to go?
I was just wondering why it went the wrong way, somewhere
Yeah, it did,
between.
but that was before me.
No, I know, I understand
Craig,
that, but.
that's not a finance question.
All right, so that's that for the police department budget lines. Do you have any questions before we move on?
Bill?
I just got one, and it's maybe a comment more than anything else. Looking at the last 3 years of expenditures, they were like 1.35 million, 1.30 million, 1.32 million as of 20 December for this past year. And you had a budget of 1.49 million. Now you're asking for 1.6 million, but you've had a historical trend of in the 1.3s. And I understand because the budget is funded if all officers were here 12 months a year, 365 days, so you got this amount of money built in there.
Yep.
And your default budget for this next year is still 1.525. So if the town elected not this committee, but if the town voters say no to the operating budget, you'd still be in pretty good shape with a 1.5 million based on your historical spending, correct?
There's a gamble. It's a
Yeah,
gamble.
but you got 100, you got quite a pad for the,
There's no pad. There's no pad.
there's a pad based on historical spending.
You can call it what you
I
want.
think you have to understand too, that each year the collective bargaining passes with a lot of things tied to it. And that was a 3% step. So everything
But the
that
de-
goes up
but-
3%, the wages, you still have
But the default
26%.
budget covers that. You look at the default and proposed, they're the same for
Right,
the,
but you're looking at last year's approved to this year's, right? So there's a 3% increase in all the wage salary items for the collective
I'm-
bargaining that passed.
I'm looking at the default budget versus the proposed budget, that's still gonna be
Okay.
the same. And you're still gonna get 1.5 million.
Well, if you came, or if you asked the Board of Selectmen to come to me and cut the Ware Police Department budget by the difference between the proposed budget and the default budget, I could nickel and dime the lines, and the authorized number of officers would sit around and look at each other and wonder what they're gonna do today. Or I could cut a police officer. That's where we are. This budget has,
Right.
there's nothing left to cut. We have faced the CPI every year and tried to address it, and we've been unsuccessful. So there's nothing left. There's no pad. This is it. This is it. The only thing that remains is, as a community, you deciding you want to change the way you're doing your policing. That's it. That's all that's left.
Keith?
But there's an assumption there that you will have a full-time officer, one more full-time officer all year, and one full-time chief for 8 months beyond you, right? So if you make that statement, you're assuming that you're gonna have a full
Yep.
complement of chief and another officer.
Yep.
I think that's Bill's point, is that, you know, historically, that hasn't happened, I guess, is what he's saying.
Right.
That assumption hasn't been made.
So, Bill, just to clarify, so you're saying, if we get default, there's a difference of about 75, right? Largely, if you look at the fuel line, you look at the dispatch line, that's up about 30.
Right,
or,
right.
you know.
That's for
So
fire-
there's some big
fire and
things
police.
that we still have to do.
I understand
And
that.
I'm just, you know, I mean, I thought of 3%, but you're right, that's in both sides.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I guess relatively speaking, though, the police department is, if you get stuck with a default budget,
Yep.
the police department's in better shape than other departments because
There is
of
stuff
the
in
wiggle
there.
room with vacancies that historically have occurred, may
It's
occur.
not- It's not
may-
the same that we've had in the past, and I totally get what you're
Right,
saying.
right.
Because we're short of.
Neil?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have a sheet from Naomi that talks about surplus purchases. Was that addressed before?
No.
In 2018, the selectmen apparently authorized $95,000 to be spent out of surplus for a variety of things. And with respect to the police department, there's a note that says, let's call it 32,000, maybe 34,000. Of the amounts are in the chief's 2019 budget. The proposed budget will be reduced if these items are purchased in 2018. So in other words, like the schools sometimes do, there's a surplus at the end of the year, they buy next year's supplies out of it, and so the surplus goes down.
How much was expended, Neil?
The total for the entire town was $96,592. The total for the police department was $48,305.
No, that's not right.
But there was one item at the very beginning called a one-time purchase over budgeted camera project for $14,580, which was not seen as a 2019 purchase. My question is, to the extent that these things were 2019 purchases, have they been deducted from your 2019 budget?
Yes.
Yes, they have.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to ask a question and then I will ask you, Tom. Going back to this surplus business, we went on an austerity program in October. Everybody got told to throttle back on their spending for their departments. We've heard that from everybody. So now, that was stated by both.
Austerity.
Austerity, when you tell people not to spend. Okay, sorry. So we told them they shouldn't spend out of their budgets for what they needed. Then we had called that surplus because we didn't expend it when they wanted to because we had them on a spending freeze, correct? Now, out of this, I do not know, is that $48,000 figure correct for PD? Higher, lower? By? By, how much?
Oh, I thought you said high.
No, high is not that it.
It was like 29 something? No, actually, it was 27, I think.
Plus the 14,000?
We reduced a couple of those items by one, and then we took the gutters and the camera project out, which was 17. I think it's like 27 maybe?
But does that include the 14,000?
No,
No.
we haven't done anything with that 14,000.
Okay, but is that coming out of surplus?
You haven't even talked about finishing that project yet.
We haven't
I doubt
talked about
it.
finishing it.
I would say no.
Okay. It just seems odd that we're considering something surplus that was originally part of the budget that needed to be expended, and now it's,
But I think he just spoke, those items were in the 19 proposed that we took out of 19. It's the list he's talking about.
it didn't come out of 18 money.
It was spent in 18, but they were subtracted before,
Mhm.
from the 19.
But it came out of the 18 budget that we froze because we were tight on money, and apparently we had money in the 18 budget to pay for things in the 19 budget because we told everybody they couldn't spend on the things they needed, and I've heard, and I want to know if I got that correct, because I know Fire told us that there were things they had to hold off on because they were told to be on a freeze, and they are still being, they went to being careful and they didn't buy everything. That's why they had a 66,000 surplus. So I need clarification, please.
We should be talking about the 2019 budget, not the 2018 operation.
Well, it figures into that, because if you're taking expenditures from the 2018 budget that we're saying, you know, we need to increase the 2019, and we're taking money out of the 2018, that's telling me that somewhere we had money left in 2018 that was supposed to be expended one way and it wasn't, and now we're expending it on things that were not initially planned because these were not for 2019, it was for 2018.
Right, but because our department heads were fiscally conservative, when we put them on the freeze, so that we made sure, and then they came in, things they might have bought in 18 they didn't buy, we allowed them to buy with 18 months.
So they bought everything they needed and wanted out of the 18 money before we did this.
I can't verify that as a yes, but I'm gonna assume yes.
Okay, that's what I want.
Yeah.
Chris?
I can explain a little bit of that. When the freeze comes off, say in December, you have a drawer full of purchase orders. And if you can get them through and get the delivery in time, you get the stuff. But it's very hard to make intelligent purchases. Benji alluded to that.
Yes.
If you only have a month.
Yes.
So that may be why it carries over to the next year.
Tom?
Well, two things. First, following what's being discussed here, that's pretty typical every year. The board has done that just to be cautious because we can't overspend the budget. So beginning of November or something, we just say, get approval from the town administrator before you make a purchase, because we got to be careful. But that's not related to this. My question has to do with whether or not in the line for New Hampshire retirement, whether that includes a projected amount that we would have to pay with the change in leadership at the police department. It does, okay.
In the proposed.
In the proposed, yes.
Are we done with the police department budget? Page 10 of 12. The animal control. Are there any questions about the animal control?
Yes. Can I speak?
Go ahead, Donna.
Have you found anyone yet?
No, we've done 3 selection processes and have had 0 applicants. That's one of the reasons. I'm sorry.
Didn't you just have one from November?
Didn't you have something come in?
I think you had something. I think you had one.
Okay, so maybe we had one. I don't remember. So we may have had one. But that's why you're seeing in front of you, then in the next round of discussions in the warrant, an increase in the pay, the wages for animal control.
Bill?
Okay, so that would be, you're trying to make it a full-time position with benefits? So
No.
No?
No,
So the reason for the warrant article is, again?
we're trying to attract a pool of qualified applicants by bringing the wages up to more than $1 less than what the other animal control officers in the area make. From about $11 an hour, $12 an hour to 15.
When's the last time we had an animal control officer on board?
Roughly 15 months.
What's been the impact of not having an animal control officer?
Officers went to 322 animal-related calls this year. So they are dealing with animal calls instead of patrolling your neighborhoods.
Just to understand that with the two were together, the 12,000 in the warrant would add on to the 12,000 in the budget.
Is the 12,000, is the combined two, did you arrive at that based on,
You want
What?
to jump over to the warrants?
well, yeah, I think
You
that's
can
where,
probably cross over with this.
that's kind of where we're headed, I think,
Okay.
anyway. Yeah, because I don't know if there's anything else, is there anything else on the animal control budget besides the,
Just,
go ahead, yeah.
just curious, meetings and seminars, would that be, if you did get somebody in, that you would want them to learn all about it, or?
That's correct. For instance, our last animal control officer went to a number of trainings and was highly qualified in the area of animal abuse investigations. I would, I'm not going to be here to do it myself, but I would recommend that practice continue. If you're going to have an animal control officer, you need to have those skills.
Sherry, you wanted to say something?
I was just gonna say that, you know, looking at $15,000 a year, whatever the number is here for animal control, $12,000, a little over 12,000 a year. And we've got 360-something calls the police are going after, and they get paid a heck of a lot more than $15 an hour. Plus, when they pick up an animal, if they don't know the owner, they have to transport that over to Concord. That animal has, you know, if it's a dog, a cat, probably a dog more than likely, but it has to get transported to Concord. So they've got an hour drive on top of that with fuel and the car and wear and tear.
What did our last animal control officer get paid, and how many hours did that person work?
In the $12, $13 an hour range, I don't know that number off the top of my head. And that is one of the reasons we're having this article in here, because up to this moment, the 12,000 does not cover the maximum, the exposure that we would have as a community in terms of the hours that might be worked.
Neil?
Does the animal control officer work on a per-call basis, or is he or she paid a stipend for so many hours?
Per call basis.
So if it's 2 hours a call, and there are 300 50 calls, that would be 700 calls, 700 hours a year, based on the police calls.
Sure.
Will this person have set hours, or do they only go out when they have a call?
That's what you said.
Yeah.
When they have a call.
Only when they have a call?
That's right.
So not 8 to 5
That's
every day?
correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
And it's not
Now, the
Monday
calc,
through
the
Friday.
calculation that went into the article there talks about the number of hours, and that is, frankly, we calculated it based on the maximum exposure. So in order for them to remain as a part-time per diem employee, they have to work 30 or less hours a week. So it's calculated based on that number rather than trying to do what's been done in the past, and which is grossly under what the animal control officer actually worked. This is closer to reality.
So
Neil?
30 hours a week times, what's the new pay rate?
15.
There you go.
15? Thank you.
Times 52.
Ricky?
Two things. I mean, yes, I'm not trying to take the chief's fire away here, but, it's more than just going out, grabbing the loose dog and bringing it to the shelter and et cetera. I mean, there's gonna be paperwork goes along behind it. If there's an animal cruelty case, they're gonna be investigating that. So we're hoping that, we're all hoping, knock on wood, that we don't have to run into these and that we don't have, there could be up to a 30-hour limit. Hopefully, again, 10 would be hopefully too much, but we don't know. Again, our previous ACO was very good about the animal cruelty cases, but it exists. And right now, just frankly, I'm sure the chief can back me up, is, the officers just don't have I don't want to say the time, but the resources available to their own to make those investigations happen without additional resources. The other thing is too, Madam Chairman, if we could have the people come to the mic, including Mr. Kirk and anybody that speaks out here, because
Okay,
I'm sure that
I was remiss and you are
yeah,
correct.
I'm sure that the viewing audience can't hear. So
Going on with that concept, with people, you do need to come up to the mic. I need to speak up closer. But with this animal control person, to do animal control, you have to be able to transport. What do we have for a transport vehicle?
Right now, we have a 2008 or 9 Crown Victoria, Ford Crown Victoria.
A four-door car?
Yep,
And what kind of shape is it in?
garbage.
So we are offering a position with a horrible vehicle.
You got it.
Good to know.
The former canine car, right?
Chris?
It's just an example of the kind of skill that is needed that maybe police aren't trained for. Recently on my Facebook page, a friend of mine put up that she helped 2 officers round up a cow.
Yes, that probably was Steve Roberts' cow.
I don't know whose cow it was.
Yeah, I heard
but,
that
she was very
the other
comfortable around cows, and not everybody is.
Yes,
So
no, it's one of
that's
Steve's
the kind
cows
of
got
training
out.
that an ACO needs. So.
Anything else on animal control? Then let's, unless you have more in the article for animal control, let's move over to the warrant. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So there are 4 articles in the warrant that are related to the police department. The first one just talked about the animal control officer, and rather than try and bounce back and forth, we'll just go right down the list. The first article after that then is for the police student resource officer. The idea being that we would partner with the school district to fund having a student resource officer in the high school and middle school during the academic year. That works out for the town's burden would be 1/3 the cost, where, and the school districts would split the remaining 2/3.
Yeah.
Neil?
I'm reading the article based on the microphone.
Oh, Neil, you need to come up so we can all hear you, please. Thank you, Rick.
I'm reading the article in the draft of 1/7/19, and it talks about raising $49,500. And it only talks about $19,000 coming from the school district. Is there something else? Also, it talks about 9 months. Could somebody clarify where the other money is coming from? And also, what happens if it's approved by 1 or 2, but not all 3 of the entities?
I'm going to answer the last question first and then defer to Beth. This is a three-legged stool. If the funding from one of the other sources fails, I would imagine that the town will take the position that it has failed and has failed, and the position would not be filled. Now, as to the 19,000, et cetera, I'm going to have to defer to you.
So for 2019, it's going to be a little tricky because our fiscal year ends December 31st. The school ends June 30th. So technically, they're only going to be an SRO for the last 3 months of the school year. So that will be the only revenue we receive for 2019. Does that make sense?
I have a question that probably relates to your handiwork. The school budget did a different amount. There were 28,000 something in the school budget. the
Yeah,
town
because
of
they
Weare
get
school
to budget for a full year. They get to budget July 1st through June 30th. So that's a full year of them. We only get to budget for 9 months.
Okay. That makes sense.
It's good. It took a while for me to understand it, but I'm glad you got it faster.
Chris, did you have a
Yeah,
question?
what is the full cost of the officer?
It's roughly $85,000 a year.
Okay, that comes out right. Okay, thank you.
Neil?
I would hope this article is substantially rewritten so it's understandable. I don't think it's understandable as it sits now. The $85,000 is nowhere mentioned here, and that's going to be in succeeding budgets. It's not clear how much of the time during calendar 2019 is going to be spent at the school and how much is going to be spent at the town. It looks as though the town is paying 2/3 of the cost of this, and it's not clear for what period. I think this is very confusing, and I would urge that whoever's writing these articles redo this so people understand what happens, and also that the articles specifically state that if in fact there is, if one of the 3 entities does not approve this, then no money is appropriated, even for the town or the school district that may have voted in favor of it.
Yes. I'd like to ask a question. Oh, can I help?
Let me try.
Nice and slow now.
So, Neil, when you vote on your budget for the school, you're voting on July 1st of 19 to June 30th of 2020
For the school budget?
for the school budgets. We budget from January of 1st of 19 to December 31st of 19. So what you're seeing, it's very confusing, is you're seeing this portion of 19, and the difference that you're not seeing on the school side is their schools together have got their, we're not going to see the $28,000 from each school in 19 because of our year's difference. They do fiscal, we do calendar. Also, I thought it was pretty explanatory in the sentence that it says it's required that the school warrant, town warrant articles must pass to be approved.
Yes, but it doesn't say that.
Come on up, we
Yeah,
can
you
share.
need to come up and share.
But it does not say what happens if they're not approved. It looks as though the money will still be appropriated, but can't be spent for this purpose.
But it says it's required that it must pass to be approved.
Okay. If the lawyer says that means that taxpayers will not pick up the amount of money that they where town taxpayers will not pay $49,000, if that's what this means, and the lawyer thinks that's fine, that's okay. But it certainly isn't clear to me as a reasonably
Okay.
responsible reader of warrant
Okay,
articles.
well, we'll run that by DRA and run it up the flagpole, but we did. And they're okay with what we wrote, as well as we have added the full cost of the 85,000 to the warrant article. What you don't see, I did see the school article, doesn't say anything about.
No, and we mentioned
Right.
that. to
So that's
them.
why, I mean, it's, let's all do it together. I agree, yeah. But that's why the difference. I don't know if that helps or makes things worse.
Chris?
Yeah, this came up in the discussion at the school, so somebody will ask you this, I'm sure. Will there be a cruiser assigned to the SRO? Now, I didn't ask that, it's not original
It
with
was
me.
coming, so it's okay.
The animal control
I
vehicle.
asked it. It's me, sorry.
When a car is available, a car will be assigned to the SRO.
Is a car available currently?
It would be dependent on the day.
Now, with this SRO,
Well, just finishing that though. So if there's not a car available, what's it gotta do? Walk into school?
Or the school's not.
Bicycling.
giving
It'd be
SRO
dropped off
officer-
by a duty officer or take their personal vehicle up.
going on this SRO, this person has to be hired. First and foremost, who has jurisdiction over this? Because I have asked some questions on the school side and not what I heard. I want to see what you say. Who does the SRO, who's their boss?
The Weare Police Department.
So all the contracts and everything would affect that person. That would be part of the union, that SRO officer,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay. Question number 2. This person has to be hired. We currently are down a person in Weare PD. According to our contracts, the union contract, our people have the right to put in for this and get first shot at it. And I've read this very carefully. So, if that were to happen, if we had a person in Weare PD that put in for this, was qualified, and could have this job, we would be down another officer. So am I going to see language in this that's going to say this position cannot be filled until we have now filled the empty position at Weare PD first? And therefore that money will not be expended and moved around to other things? Or am I going to see the very strong possibility that somebody from Weare PD will put in for this job, be qualified for it, because they can get preference, it's in the contract. We would be down an officer because of this article, and that would take us down to 2 instead of 1, and that is to the detriment of the town, which the voters have voted that they want 12 officers. Can you clarify, explain how that's going to be handled, please?
I know how I would handle it,
Okay,
but after April 11th.
you won't be
Somebody
here.
else. So it's, I'll tell you how I would handle it.
Okay.
And then how the Board of Selectmen work with my successor remains to be seen. I can't look into a crystal ball.
Okay,
So, for the sake of this conversation, let's make an assumption
okay,
that this article is successful and all 3 legs of the stool pass. Okay? So now we know that the voters, like the school boards and the police department, want to have a school resource officer in the schools. Okay, so now that's the assumption. As you've pointed out, we do have a current vacancy. As of noon today, we have so far 2 qualified candidates that we're looking at for this single vacancy. Whether or not they successfully complete the remaining portions of our selection process remains to be seen.
do they have to go to the academy?
One would not, one would.
Okay.
So the school resource officer position, as you have pointed out, is in fact somewhat subject to the collective bargaining. Members of the collective bargaining unit do have opportunity at specialized assignments before somebody from outside the department could be selected for the position. That is not a deal breaker. So what I mean by that is, if in the event that the selection process that was used to find a school resource officer determined that the current staffing at the Weare Police Department did not have somebody that was qualified for the position, then they could conceivably go outside the department to hire.
But,
No, we're not quite to but yet.
okay.
If that person was hired from outside, they would become part of the collective bargaining unit.
And you would be their boss, or,
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. So, but we still have this pesky outlying vacancy that you're talking about. Let's for a moment, let's further the assumption that that vacancy still remains come September 1st,
yes.
okay? The school resource officer would not be fully assigned to the schools. We would still continue with, under Sean Kelly, we would still continue with the patrol responsibilities first. Okay, that's been the position I've taken since I got here. That's the position I'll take with me when I leave. So for the moment, what happens after that, we have them go up there as often as we could, but
So they would be working for us, the town PD, first and foremost, and as long as we have a vacancy before they're up at the school, is that correct?
I think one of the things that we have to make absolutely clear for everybody, just because somebody is assigned as a student resource officer at either the high school or the middle school, depending on whatever day it is, they are not an employee of the school district. They will always remain in the employ of the Weare Police Department, okay? So let's say today they're at the school and they're working at the school and an emergency, the dam at Clough Park breaks, and we need staffing. We can pull them from there. But once they're assigned as a school resource officer, they're assigned as a school resource officer.
So if we have, going on the but situation, we have a hole in a vacancy in our department. And we have a qualified person in our department for the SRO. What happens then?
That's going to have to be up to the next guy and the Board of Selectmen. They're going to have to decide that together.
So this is really a 13th police officer,
Yes,
Yes, it is.
which,
not a school resource officer.
That's correct. It's an employee of the police department.
yes, that is where the conflict comes in with the 12 that the town has voted for.
There's no conflict.
There's no conflict.
There's no conflict at all. When you voted for 12, you were increasing the size of the department to 12. This would increase the size of the department to 13. There's no conflict. Your voters are putting in place the authority to hire a 13th officer.
That's not what the article indicates to voters.
No. And that's not how the school is portraying it.
If your understanding is accurate, and I have no reason to doubt it, the article is very misleading.
I don't understand how, but okay.
Because it talks about a school resource officer, not another cop.
When asking the school this question, I know that in an emergency you can pull them off, but regarding who's got the authority and who they respond to, I got a different answer as to who controls. Yes, I did, Ricky. I asked a very specific question of the SAU. And the answer I got not necessarily allowed us to be able to move them around all the time. It meant that they were here.
Okay, and I'll follow that logic. But what is the school resource officer?
Police officer.
Thank you. So now, and I do fire EMS. I would not expect that the school would train the police officer that has been assigned to the schools to do police work at that grade and age level.
Okay.
I would not expect that. So I don't understand where the school would, other than working with the police chief, I don't understand where the school would have authority over the officer. Because
No, my question to them was this question particularly regarding the hiring ability of the collective bargaining agreement. And they did not think that that applied to anything with them. And I said, it's a collective bargaining agreement. They're part of the police department. So that collective bargaining clause is going to have some effect if we have the appropriate person who fits the thing. And they were not confident that that was true, and that's why I'm asking.
It may be a misunderstanding then.
That's why I'm asking
Sounds like-
for the perception.
That's what it sounds like, a
And
misunderstanding.
what I'm hearing from over here is what I thought it was and what the collective bargaining agreement is, but it's not what has been discussed up at the SAU level. And I just needed clarification of that.
And I guess I don't understand the discrepancy in thinking it was coming from in-house. The position may be filled from in-house, but the warrant article is very clear that we're going to hire someone.
Oh, I realize that, but I also have to look at that contract and know that if you've got somebody in there, they get preferential treatment if they have the requirements.
Which is possible. By
Seniority.
Right.
Thank you.
Or what
Not
have you.
just that. They would have to have.
And that's why I have to know if that's true. Up until Chief Kelly just said it, there has been nothing that said that would let me feel that this person's going to go up there and we're going to have another hole in Weare PD. And that is a huge concern.
I don't look
Let's
at it.
Take the
I'm
next step,
sorry.
though, okay, if we can for a moment.
Sure.
We're going to further the assumption that now we're at full staff.
Okay.
We've hired for the 13th position in order to enable the school resource officer, student resource officer, and they are assigned up there. Okay, so now we have a full-time police officer that is assigned as a student resource officer that works alternately on a schedule that my successor and the school principals work out in terms of which schools they'll be in and what day. And then we have a vacancy occur at the Weare Police Department.
Okay.
Officer so-and-so decides that they're going to go to another police department for more money, or they've decided that they're going to retire, or whatever the reason. Now there's a vacancy.
Yes.
The school resource officer, the student resource officer, is not going to be reassigned to town. Those vacancies would be filled through the ordinary budget, as we would any vacancy.
What does this officer do in the summer months?
That's why we, the town, has the burden of 1/3 of the cost. Because during the summer months, Christmas, the winter break, the spring break, Thanksgiving week, things like that, they would be a very welcome and much-needed additive to our patrol schedule.
We currently are not at 12. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tammy.
So let's say you are down an officer and you pull the student resource officer for patrol. Is the school still obligated to be paying you for their share?
I've just said I wouldn't pull. But, after
Oh, you
April
wouldn't.
11th, I would not pull them. No. The vacancy would be filled the same way it would be filled today. Through
Okay, I
overtime
misunderstood.
and so forth.
Okay, thank you.
Tom?
No, the same thing I was going to clarify, because that's the way I interpreted it. Once that person is in place as a school resource officer, they would stay in place. The only time they would be pulled is if there were a large local emergency
That's
that
correct.
needed all hands on deck.
That's correct.
Or vacation.
What is the object of the school resource officer?
Huh?
What is your perception?
No.
My personal perception is somebody who's up there to talk to the kids that want to hang with that person, kind of keep their eyes on things, but having been in school, I have nieces and nephews and grandnieces and nephews that are all in school. And one thing I know about people that are creative in what they want to do, not necessarily be the average student following what everybody's supposed to do in school, they traditionally do not hang with the most authoritative person in the school. So is their job to go find those people and follow them? Is their job, is the perception that we're trying to build a better relationship with children? In that case, we can certainly do it at the police department with explorers and other things. What is the object of the exercise?
Okay. I've used this analogy in the past, and I apologize to those of you that have heard this analogy before. But this particular story moved me significantly. So it is never far from my mind when we start talking about student resource officers. I had an SRO working for me in my former life that was one day working out on the playground at a middle school. And when the students were called back in to return to class, one of the students was lingering out at the back of the playground and wasn't really making any effort to come in from recess. The SRO walked over to this student whom he had built a relationship with since 6th grade and started talking with the student. And the student said that he was afraid to go home because for the last X number of years, his father had been raping him. Does that happen every day? No, probably not. I hope not. I hope not. But the fact is that that student had built a relationship with that officer because he saw that officer day in and day out as a person that they could build a relationship outside of the horror that they were going through in their home. If that was the only kid that that officer saved, and he saved that kid, if that was the only one in the entire time that he served as an SRO, and he did it for years and was fabulous at it, every dime that that community spent to have that school resource officer engaged in that activity was worth every penny. Every cent. I have faith that the relationship that I have worked on over the last 4.5 years with the school districts is such that we will very carefully select a school resource officer. Whether that student resource officer comes from the existing staff or we have to go outside, I am absolutely certain that the person that is selected to work in our schools in this community will be the right person to build those relationships like that officer did on that playground that day. And if we can save another kid, then God damn it, we owe it to this community to do it. And I don't want to hear about, well, I don't want guns in my school. We owe it to these kids to be doing something about this. The number of child pornography cases that the Weare Police Department is actively engaged in today is disgraceful. It's disgraceful. And for me to hear pushback on having a qualified officer to build relationships with those kids, it's irresponsible. All right. Anything else on the SRO? And moving on.
One other minor thing. I also agree with Neil about the way this is worded, but putting that aside, when you mentioned the money will be received from the school district, should that really say districts? Because we actually have two.
Plural.
Yep, that's something that can be worked out as part of the development of the article for final consideration.
Somebody thinks about it.
Okay.
Laura,
Yes, Donna.
I would just like, under the circumstances, what, nobody knows what's going on but our chief and our police department. I'd like to just, I know probably there's more questions, but let our voters say yay or no on this
No.
article.
We are not doing that here. We deliberate at a later time. That is not how this works. This is fact-finding, raising questions, but we are not going to deliberate and go yay and nay tonight. We absolutely are
No,
not.
I'm saying the voters,
Oh,
not
yes.
us.
Oh, no,
Not
I
us,
agree.
the voters, honey.
Yes.
The
Okay,
voters.
I misunderstood you.
That's
I
all right.
apologize.
I just
Jim?
can't imagine.
Yeah, just a thing. This isn't. I don't see this necessarily as pushback against it. It's trying to get the process in place and get the wording correct, and so that we all understand exactly how this is working. So if it feels like we're pushing back on that, I don't think that's necessarily the intent. Certainly not from everybody, but it's to clarify how everything is working.
Chris?
The comments that we have all observed when we've gone to the school meetings have a flavor of an expectation that this is preventing school shootings. And I think the focus that you have expressed tonight is other than that and deeper than that. And I think the public needs to know what the focus is, because
Okay.
it isn't simplistic in any way.
I can talk about that a little bit, Chris, if you'd like. I tell you, we're coming up to February, and, my teeth are chattering, not from cold, but from wonder what this February is going to bring. The last two Februaries have resulted in a prolonged and substantial police presence by both the Weare Police Department and our partners in the state and federal law enforcement communities. Because of a student or students in the school that has threatened harm. So I am sympathetic to the desire, particularly given the climate that we seem to be seeing around the country with this type of violence, the school violence that we've seen. But the relationships that I was talking about before, those same relationships that enable a student to talk to an officer about what they may be experiencing is also the same kind of relationships that does, in fact, prevent school violence. Is it infallible? Certainly not. Certainly not. But so we're clear. We're not talking about having an armed presence in the schools for the purpose of having an armed presence in the schools. We are talking about having a student resource officer there for, as I described before.
Yeah, and that, I think, is, the town may have a misconception. What you expressed just now is the real reason. And it's not, putting the sheriff in there to, shoot them up or whatever they expect. It's a much broader and deeper function. And so if people understand that broader and deeper function, I think the article has a better chance.
Okay, then let's do that. Let's do that. For me, it's difficult to do because of the statute that says I can't.
No, I know.
But you can. As the finance committee, you can.
Can what?
As a board of selectmen, you can. But as an employee of the town, I can't.
No.
I can't, by law. All right, so, any other questions about the student resource officer position? All right, then, moving right along. Oh, I'm
Ricky,
sorry.
do you have a question?
Broad.
Question.
Broad.
Okay.
It's informative. The warrant articles, as you read them tonight, have not gone through lawyer or DRA
Okay,
currently.
good.
So the verbiages that we are catching, the misconceptions in there, they will be altered, like I said. And we also, as a Board of Selectmen, also already put in, as Mr. Kirk stated, was the full amount at the end. So it's because the 9-month can be misleading.
Yes.
We are putting those numbers in as well.
Excellent.
So, again, the 1.7 draft is a little outdated, not by much. Obviously, the intent of the articles is still the same, but obviously there'll be grammatical changes and legal changes as they get approved.
Okay, thank you.
Are we ready to move on? Okay. So, the next article, one full-time police officer, shall the town raise and appropriate, blah, blah, blah. You can read that. Why am I asking for this to happen? Well, some of you may know, and perhaps all of you may know, but from 3 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock in the morning, the Weare Police Department doesn't patrol your streets. We don't have people on duty. Why is that? Well, there's a variety of reasons, not the least of which, with 12 full-time officers, we don't have enough. In order to fulfill our contractual obligations under collective bargaining for us to have a midnight shift. If we add one additional officer, it would be just enough. Just enough. By 2 days. We'd have 20 hours a week extra, if you want to call it that, over what we need for the minimum staffing for 2 people 24 hours a day. So in other words, it's not enough, but with one additional officer, we can go to a 24-hour schedule. Last year, some of this discussion was robust, and I'm happy to have those discussions with you again. In essence, right now, what happens from 3 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock in the morning, in the event, and let me clarify, if something happens in town before 3 o'clock in the morning, our cops don't turn into pumpkins at 3 o'clock. They stay until the situation's resolved, okay? But if they've gone home at 3 o'clock in the morning and 302 rolls around and you dial 911, you're not going to get a Weare cop. You're going to get the next available state trooper. And remember that for a second. Because the state police don't have jurisdictional authority in the town of Weare except by agreement with the chief of police. Okay? The statute's very clear about that. There has to be an agreement between the state police and the Weare police chief in order for a trooper to come here and have the authority as a police officer. If that agreement doesn't exist, you have the same authority as that trooper here in town. None. None, in essence. Okay? So, the state police and I can only hope or assume that before me that there was the agreements in place. Very frankly, the agreement that we have is hardly more than a wink and a nod. It's certainly no more than a handshake verbal agreement between me and the troop commander. That's it. Our legal counsel says that's insufficient for us to protect this community from liability. Our legal counsel tells me that we must have a written understanding with the state police in order to protect this community from liability. Makes sense to me. I'm kind of a documentation kind of guy. So I explored that last year, and the state police graciously said that they would certainly engage us in a written document. However, because we were 3,500 people, in fact 9,000 people during the year and 14,000 during the summer months, that they would have to assign a trooper by overtime. And that cost would be passed on to us, and frankly, I don't recall what the number is, but significantly more than it would cost for us to hire a new police officer to have 24-hour coverage. Anyway, so last year, as a community, we decided not to enter that agreement and raise and appropriate the money necessary to pay the state police to police the town. And we also didn't raise and appropriate the money for the Weare police to police the town. So nothing has changed. Your risk of liability remains the same as it was before. What has changed, and I'll tell you this is a few months old, things may have changed at the state police, but Troop B, which covers the town of Weare, was 8 troopers short of their regular patrol shifts. There were, and they cover all of Hillsborough County, the whole county, from the Massachusetts town line to our Dunbarton town line, okay? They cover the whole thing. And there were shifts that they had 1 or 2 troopers on for the whole county. In the best light, when I was patrolling the streets of the mean streets of Durham, you patrol, you make your visible presence known in the place where your visible presence is going to do the most good. I can only imagine, because I've never worked for the state police, but given the number of horrific crashes that occur on the interstate and the Everett Turnpike, south of Manchester, I would expect that they probably spend a lot of time down there trying to do preventive patrols. I don't know that. It's my best guess. But if you dial 911 at 3:02 in the morning, and that trooper's on 93 at the Massachusetts state border, with his lights flashing and his siren screaming, it's going to take him 45 minutes to get here. We're blessed. We're blessed. We don't have a ton of calls here between 3 o'clock in the morning and 7 o'clock in the morning. Unfortunately, when we do, they're doozies, typically. There's domestic violence or a horrific crash. People don't call because the cat's stuck up on a tree after 3 o'clock in the morning. They simply don't. My recommendation has been for the last 4.5 years and will continue to be based on, the math that I know, the formulas that I know. I have said over and over and over again, a town of this landmass with this population, and I'm not talking about the summertime population, I'm talking about just the permanent population of 9,000 people, and the level of activity that you experience here in town, you should probably have 17 officers. Now, that seems like a lot because you've been accustomed to 10 or 11 officers. Now 12, right? In 2007, I think it was, 6 or 7, that time frame there, the town of Weare had a management study done of the Weare Police Department. So 11, 12 years ago, the town paid to have this study done and were told that you should have 17 officers. Back more than a decade ago. I'm not expecting you to hire 17 officers tomorrow. I'm not. But I do think you need to be moving that direction. I've thought that for the last 4.5 years, and I'll leave here next April thinking that too. But it's time. It's time for you to start moving in that direction. It's time at least to fulfill a 24-hour schedule so that you have the legal standing in terms of law enforcement authority here in town. If you want to direct the Board of Selectmen to bargain more fiercely, to have to remove the language that calls for double coverage here in town, make that recommendation. I do not. Simply because, again, I go back to land mass, knowing the size of the police departments that surround us and the land mass that they're responsible for. Our officers, even when there's 2 of them on, they're covering 30 square miles per officer. And that's a lot of ground to cover. So I really don't recommend you going back to a system where you only have to have 1 officer on duty. That's bordering on insanity. But anyway, this job, this one that I'm asking for in this article, is intended to close that gap at least enough for you to have 24-hour services here in town. Okay?
Go ahead, Jim.
How many calls do you, like in 2018, did you get between 3 a.m. and 7 a.m.?
I'd have to look. Our calls went up 40% in the last calendar
I
year.
believe it.
We went from 5,000 and some change to 8,000 and some change from 17 to 18. So that's between 7 in the morning and 3 at night. I don't know what 3 in the morning to 7 in the morning. I don't know. In 2017, if I remember correctly, I think the state police were talking about only 150 some odd calls. That's not a lot. That's really not a lot. But it is if you're getting your ass handed to you in a domestic violence thing, or you're hanging upside down in your car after being in a wreck.
Someone's broken in your house.
Yeah, buddy. It really is. All right.
Jim?
Yeah, just for my own, pea brain of a mind, this is actually to hire another police officer to get us up to 13 or perhaps 14 with
That's
the
correct.
SRO. And it's not just the equivalent money that we can then use for paying overtime to our existing. No. We have to have at least 13 in order to have the appropriate amount to rotate
That's
for
correct.
24 hours.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Because, and again, it's there's math that I did last year that I could go back and find for you. The cost of overtime, the dollars and cents of overtime for 2 police officers to work 8 hours, 365 days, is more than this position. But the cost, the dollar cost, doesn't necessarily equate even to the loss of effectiveness of those officers that are now compelled to work all that overtime in order to fulfill those shifts.
Just a quick, they probably get time and a half. Do they get double time after so many hours? Okay.
No, there's no provision for that in the contract.
Holidays.
Just
Right,
holidays.
holidays.
Okay, I used to be on call quite a bit, and
Yep.
after so many hours, we would
Yep.
get double time. Okay.
Yep.
I have to ask a question. You've been in this town for 4 years plus. Do you respect the judgment of our residents?
I've said to you over and over and over again that we put this in front of the voters and let the voters decide. That has been my long belief. I can only tell you what my recommendation is. 31 years in this job, doing this, my recommendation. The recommendation of whomever it was that you hired to do in 2007 told you the same thing. You're not hearing a different story. This is, people that know are telling you, this is what you should do.
I am hearing
So I can make
that's-
you a recommendation. I could sit, it'd be a waste of my breath to, pound on the podium and et cetera, blah, blah, blah. You have to vote, you have to vote
Last
for
year,
this.
we went through this discussion. This is not the first year we've gone through this. I asked for numbers on the calls, the hours, the kinds of calls for a breakdown. 2 years prior, Greg and I sat on what commission was it, Greg?
Well, the highway garage, the noise ordinance, and
Noise
the rifle
ordinance.
range one.
The noise ordinance. And we got a complete blowout from the police department, hour by hour, shift by shift for the calls. And at that time, we had less than 1% between the hours of 1 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock at night. No, 1 o'clock in the morning, 6 a.m. That was, we had the complete breakdown. We got it from the police department. Last year, we did not get a breakdown. You cannot give me numbers, but here's my question. The town has voted this down more than once. We aren't at 12. Now we're asking for an SRO because we need more social relations with kids in schools because there are problems. I'm not mocking. I'm merely stating. We have many experts in school for children now, and again, I'm not attacking on any level, I'm just laying the groundwork. I had 3 full-time people out for 17 and a half weeks this year. Some of our people working 60 hours a week because we were short coverage. We had officers working 1 on at a shift at night because we were short. And I am having a very hard time wrapping around hearing this warrant article come forward when we have not sufficiently had enough people on deck all year to just finish out what we're supposed to have. I have a very difficult time with this. And having talked to Troop B, I know Sherry did last year when she came in on the Board of Selectmen. I've had several talks with them because I'm involved with other organizations that require me to have those conversations. I know that they will come if they are called. You said that they have to have your authority to come in and function as having authority, that you did say that earlier. Do they have that authority from you now? If they were called in tonight, do they have a verbal authority from you to come in and?
I told you that.
I just want to make sure I got that right.
The written agreement does not exist. A handshake agreement does.
Okay, so they do have that authority. But seeing how we have not achieved the goals of which we are the second safest town in the state, we are the second safest state, let me finish, in the United States, our crime threat from guns is, with the laws that we have, is extremely low in the United States. There's all studies, it's all over the place. At this point in time, with the amount of things that you are asking for, that everybody in every board is asking for, do you think it's wise to be pushing this when we have not yet delivered a full complement of officers for a year?
Yes, I do. It's the same recommendation. If you had approved this money last year and there was an officer, now we're on midnight shift, I'd be standing in front of you today asking you for another full-time officer.
But Sean, you have given me
And I would
facts
tell
and
you
figures.
next year that I would ask for another officer. And I would tell you the year after that that I'd be asking you for another officer. I am making recommendations based on my best professional judgment. What you decide as a finance committee to recommend to the Board of Selectmen or to the voters, that's up to you. I am giving you my professional judgment. I am also repeating the same thing you've been hearing for more than a decade. The fact that you don't have full staffing at the moment has no bearing on this, Lori. Because let's say tomorrow it gets filled, but you haven't approved a 13th officer. Now it doesn't get done until 2020. And if you use that argument again because somebody leaves, then it's 21. And now you're pushing this further and further down the road while the population in town increases. We have a 40% increase in calls for service this year. I mean, at what point do you just say, okay, we're done?
All I'm saying to you is this. I have seen no facts and figures, calls, lists, right down the line that proves that everything is tracking as you say. You can say it, but you aren't able to show me hard documentation.
What makes you think I can't do that?
You haven't done it.
Have you asked me for it?
Yes, last year I
No.
asked a lot.
No, you didn't. You sent over an overly broad request. I responded to that request. I told you that you needed to be more specific. Otherwise, it could cost hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars in overtime just to get the numbers that you're asking for in the grossly overbroad request that you made. I would be happy to provide you anything you want, as long as you're not going to cost the town $1 million to do it. Anything you want, Lori. I have a robust computer system that will be able to develop anything you want. Don't try to play that game with me, because you're going to lose.
Sean, when we were on the committee
Yeah,
for
I know what
safety,
I know.
we
And
had
I've
that.
still
I'm
done it.
not going to argue. You
Yeah,
didn't.
we shouldn't be discussing that.
Excuse,
Da-
no,
Donna.
just want to say, excuse me, Laurie, this is between you
Yes.
and the chief. Please do it
Later.
not here at the table as a board.
Yep.
Please,
fine.
please.
Bill?
I just got another, it's into the numbers and the budget issue. One thing that I have a concern with is when we ask for additional position, when we can't fill the ones we have, is that if you get that position and you have the vacancy, now you've got another empty position that goes into the budget for this full-time salary for this year that won't be paid out, that will also appear in the salary line for next year and the default budget. That continues to rise without the body being there. I mean, I've always advocated.
I hear what you're saying, but
filling
that's an argument that you need to take up with the Board of Selectmen. I'm giving.
No, I agree, and they're here. But that's why I'm saying. Go ahead. Oh.
No,
yeah,
fine.
go ahead.
So you have essentially two police officers you're asking for here, an SRO and a full-time officer.
Yep.
In terms of community safety, which one would be more important to have?
That depends on whether you're talking about a short-term view or a long-term view.
How about giving me the answer for both?
A short-term view is adding an officer so that you have 24-hour coverage. A long-term view is the generational change that you make by having somebody in the schools.
Yeah.
Tom?
Several points. First, just to verify, having been on the Board of Selectmen for a number of years, that when Chief Began was chief, he was asking for additional officers. He was using a formula that he called, I think it was Bartello formula or something like that, that was a respected formula based on population. This is how much you have. And he came in with requests for several years, but then the recession hit in 2007, and he stopped asking. So that, just to verify that was a request, and the case was made year after year for needing additional officers, and the only time when we got the 2 additional, to bring it from 10 to 12, was when a person had to die in order to make that happen, basically. And a very emotional appeal at the town meeting and or deliberative session, I think it was in 2006 or 7, brought about that change. So, that need has been put before the Board of Selectmen many times over the years. The other thing, when it comes to numbers.
But the town voted it down, correct?
Correct.
So the town spoke.
Yes.
Well, I don't think it ever went on the ballot, actually. I think that basically the Board of Selectmen never got it onto the ballot after those 2 officers were hired. I may be wrong on that. I have to go back and research it. But, when you're talking about whether it's the fire department and ambulance service or police department, and how many calls they get between 3 in the morning and 7 in the morning, it's not a quantity thing. It's a need, and I can, if I didn't want to violate the confidentiality of a family member, I could go into details of something that happened in my house last night, where that a person could have hurt themselves severely. At 2 o'clock in the morning, the police are knocking on my door. Well, what if it had been 3 o'clock or 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning? Eventually, this person, after some very pleasant, patient, and very well-trained police officers, worked through a difficult situation. We talked this person into getting in my car, and they followed us to the Concord Hospital for an evaluation. Okay, but what if it had been 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, and it could just as easily have been, instead of 2 o'clock? And they hung in there because it was their duty to hang in there, and till they got us over there, and then 2 of the officers stayed until nearly 5 o'clock in the morning until they saw that everything was okay. Okay, now, I hate to make it a personal thing, but it is a personal thing for anybody if they have an emergency. And certainly the the wife beater doesn't stop because it's 3 o'clock in the morning if he comes home at 4 drunk. The home invader doesn't necessarily check his watch, or maybe he checks his watch and says it's 3 o'clock, it's a good time to go in. So it goes on and on. It's not a matter of do we get 15 calls between 7 in the morning at 3 and 7. It's a matter of having a call that's desperate where a family or an individual needs the help. And, you know, same thing with the fire department, the rescue, and I know that the fire chief is trying to build that service in so that the town is covered 24 hours a day. And that's just the way this is a necessary thing to have this coverage. It's not a luxury. It's a necessity to have that coverage 24 hours a day. And we don't want to have a trooper in Nashua if you have an emergency in Weare.
Ricky.
Just want to shine a little history. You know, I'm not going to debate the position itself. I'm just going to debate the fact that it's been on the warrant article many years. The highway garage was on the warrant article very many years. We had a fire truck that was on there for 3, almost 4 years that was fully funded that the taxpayer said no on. So, you know, again, we as a selectman and trust our department heads to come up with the best suggestions to better the department for the town, not to better the department for themselves or their own personal gains. And, you know, if it comes down to every year there's a warrant article that the selectmen put forward that you guys weigh in on, then that's the way it's going to be. I mean, you know, I couldn't say, I mean, right now, the town size of the way it is, yeah, I've been to a couple calls in the morning, in the early morning, where we waited for state police to show up for almost an hour or more. And to me, you know, in this town, that's unacceptable. But again, you know, to say that it's been voted down and that's what the voters think, okay, then we just keep bringing it forward. And eventually, I think, and again, I would rather see informed voters vote. But, you know, when the voters continue to see that, show up and see, you know, hey, there's an officer on here every year, you know, obviously they need it. They're not just wanting it and it keeps going up, cost keeps going up. So, again, it's one of them things where it may take a few years, but again, if that's what the department head thinks that we need, that's the selectmen put it on there.
Jeremy. As far as what you said about the informed voters, is there another way that you can get this information out to the voters? There's several people that I've talked to in the communities that I spend time with that have mentioned, well, we see this on the warrant articles, but we don't know why it's needed. And then they just vote no because they don't know any better, or it's been recommended, or the finance committee recommends against it. So they just select no and they move on, and they don't necessarily understand why.
Yeah, correct.
Do you have any idea on how to get your proposals more clearly stated outside of what we're doing?
Right, and that is a problem, and I will definitely agree with that 100%. As you can see, I'm probably one of the youngest people in this room. It's an older generation that usually takes interest in town politics. Track record, unfortunately. And, you know, we put ads in the newspaper. That's outdated technology, but it fulfills the legal requirements that we need to fill for posting events, meetings, etc. The best way to do it, and I praise the library with that Facebook page that we have, Weare, NH. That touches a lot of people. Social media touches a lot of people of all ages. And I think that that's the best way currently is to get it on social media, and bring and tell your friends and tell your neighbors. And I mean, most of us don't even talk to our neighbors now, but tell the neighbors, hey, we have a deliberative session down at the middle school. Come on down. February 9th. Not thinking
9
any
o'clock.
nights, but February 9th we're going to be there.
9/9.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of this information comes available. You know, the other thing is too, they get the mailer, and they have a question, they can always call one of the selectmen. I mean, I would like to think that you guys will all be willing to, you know, to speak. And the other thing is too, is, I mean, you know, the town office is open. We can talk to, you know, the town administrator or anybody. But again, I have said right from day one that it's hard to get information out. You know, you post to the post office, you post here, you know, with flyer, you know, but again,
Right.
if you don't come in but once a year to register your vehicle, you're never gonna see a notification here. If you don't have a PO box or no need to go to the post office, you're not gonna go there. I mean, unless you stand at the ATM waiting for it to spit cash out and you look over at the bulletin board, and, oh, there's, all right, the town's doing something, or you're on social media.
Right.
So, it's a very difficult task. I 100% agree. So to answer your question fully, got suggestions? We're open to them.
So, this is what we're limited by as employees of the town, okay? RSA, New Hampshire, RSA 659-44A, electioneering by public employees. No public employee is defined by RSA such and such shall electioneer while in the performance of his or her official duties. No public employee shall use government property or equipment, including but not limited to telephones, facsimile machines, vehicles, and computers for electioneering. For the purpose of this section, electioneer means to act in any way specifically designed to influence the vote of a voter on any question or office. Any person who violates this section shall be guilty of a misdemeanor. So it's a crime for me, once this is decided, it's a crime for me, in my role as your police chief, to promote these articles. I can't do it. So it comes down to the elected officials in their role as, Board of Selectmen, in your role as a board, to do this. I can't do it. I can make the recommendation to you, but I can't promote it after it's decided to be on the warrant. Can't do it.
Neil?
Chief, could you update us on part-timers? How many we've budgeted for, how many we have, what the situation is with respect to part-time police officers?
The Finance Committee's already heard that tonight.
Yeah, I apologize.
It's all right. So, unless there's additional questions about the full-time officer, we're going to move on to the last article. Well, at least the last article for the police department. Everything else fine?
No, we're done.
I'll talk fast. Okay, so, police cruisers. Shall the town raise and appropriate the sum of $47,461 for the purchase of one fully equipped police cruiser? So, if I was a town of one, I'd vote yes for this. And simply because for the first time in the 4 years that I've been here, 4+ years that I've been here, we actually have fleet management that has resulted in us spending less than appropriated for cruiser repairs. As I said to you earlier, when we were talking about the budget for cruiser repairs has been $20,000 for the years that I've been here, and in 2016, the last year when we didn't have any new cars, we had spent $57,000 and some change on cruiser repairs. That doesn't tell the whole story. Over the preceding, that year plus the 9 preceding, for a total of 10 years, we'd spent almost $250,000 on cruiser repairs. Last year, 2018, we spent $17,000 on cruiser repairs. This is an investment in this town. We're buying Dodge Chargers because, frankly, they have proven reliable to the state police that have had them for X numbers of years. They're less expensive than the offerings made by Ford. They come with a 5-year, 100,000-mile warranty that covers everything except for the the usual things that the oil changes and tires and brakes and things like that. Okay, Sean, but why $47,000? You're telling me a police car costs $47,000. Well, no, it doesn't cost $47,000. It costs about $24,000 to buy the car from Dodge. The rest of that, unbelievably, is lights, sirens, radios, roll bars, cages, specialized seats for prisoner transport, and all the things that have to go in the car to make it a functional police vehicle. It's astounding to me. Ordinarily, whatever that means, we might be able to transfer some materials from one car to an older car to the newer car. Well, the older cars that we're replacing were built more than a decade ago. The car that the one that I would want to replace this year is either 2008 or 2009, I forget. But it's close to a decade old, and it's a Ford product. So none of the things that are in that vehicle will transition over to a modern Dodge Charger police car. So we have to buy all new. Now, I've projected out for CIP that in 2021, if we continue down this path, we will start to be able to transition the equipment that we're buying in this round of buying into cars that we're buying, which will reduce our costs on the second round of cars, so to speak. And in the meantime, I know there's a resident in town that hates us using the word savings, but in the meantime, we're saving $30,000 a year on cruiser repairs. I think that's crazy that we were spending $57,000 on cruiser repairs. So anyway, that's why this is not a new car. This is a replacement vehicle for a car that's this year probably a decade old, if it's not 11 years old.
Bill?
Chief, we certainly supported the 3 and the 1 because we saw what you had before.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. My question is, when we start looking at individual items this year and we start with a holistic approach of how much can the town afford and where do we have to make some cuts and recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
You've got 4 now, and we never want to get to where we were before. But what's the impact? I mean, what do you need for patrol? How many cruisers do you need to cover the patrolling from 7 a.m. to 3 a.m.?
Mm-hmm. It's a good question. And what we have found through unfortunate trial and error is that we need 5 cars for patrol and 2 in a support role. So right now, the 5 cars that are assigned for patrol purposes, 4 of them are the Dodges that you referred to, and the 5th one is a 2013 Ford Explorer. Okay? So what my vision is, and whether or not my successor will have the same vision.
That's my next question.
Okay, would be that that car 6, which is the Ford Explorer, would be stripped down and made into a plain Jane car and assigned for use by the administrator. Car 9, which is currently assigned in that way, would be out the door, okay? And then the new car would replace 6 altogether. So now that we would have 5 Dodge Chargers as frontline police vehicles. In 2021, the oldest of the Dodges would become an administrative vehicle, and the last of the Mohicans would go out the door. And then ideally, again, this is Sean Kelly's vision, I don't know what my successor will want, I would recommend that you do a car a year so that we keep that repair bill down.
Right.
So you had a question?
Yeah, you have two cars on patrol any given time?
Depends on the day and it depends on the shift. There are times when there's 5 cars on and one of those cars has 2 people in it.
Okay, one of those times.
Depends on the day. How the schedule works is.
In other words, I guess my question is: are you able to, with the resources if you had to live with the resources you have now for another year, Are you gonna be able to get by? Maybe the maintenance cost is higher because you got one
Yeah,
older
that's
car.
it. That's what you're gonna see, is
Okay.
then you start to see the maintenance costs go up.
Right.
Right
Right.
now, as we're standing here, the 4 Dodge Chargers are all under warranty. So
Right.
aside from, putting wipers on them and changing the tires every once in a while, any major repairs are covered under warranty.
Yeah.
The 3 other cars are not. That's car 6, the Ford Explorer. That's far beyond its warranty.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that they could spell warranty when car 8 and 9 were built. So those cars, they've got a lot of miles on them.
Okay,
They're
so there are-
already
there are
worn out.
times
They are
when the-
already no longer.
There are times when the older cars are still filtering and running patrol, basically.
Well,
I mean,
car 6 is.
Yeah.
I mean, if we get to the point where the Blue Ghost, that's my car,
Yeah.
has to be used for patrol purposes, something has
That's
gone
unsafe.
seriously wrong.
that's unsafe for the.
You bet it is.
Yeah. Last question, because I know it's getting late. When I looked at the CIP, it talks about an SUV being purchased next year or year after on the CIP program going out. Going back a couple of years, it was, we need SUVs. Because you put all your equipment in the back, that's the right car for Weare. Boom, we can save some money, we'll go to, it's been very successful with state troopers, now we're gonna shift over and we're gonna do Chargers.
Yep.
Now I look and I say, oops, now we're getting back, there's an SUV coming back in. We're all over the map. I don't know what's the right car for Weare. And if we're gonna not buy a car in a year, maybe, this is just me talking now, not the committee. Maybe this is the right year to say, let's hold off on the Cruiser this year. We're gonna have a new chief coming in. Maybe he'll say, my recommendation is we all want, all the cars should be SUVs. So, there's that wild card coming in when you leave.
Sure. So, get back to your first part of your question, why the SUV next year?
Yeah.
Again, it's my vision. Even though the animal control officer position is a separate department, the police department has the good fortune of overseeing that spot. And so that car that is not included in the police department fleet in terms of police fleet management, my vision was that the question earlier about, isn't that a four-door sedan? Yes.
Yeah, it is.
It's not an ideal vehicle. So my vision was that car 6, that Ford Explorer, would go for an administrative role for a year, and then subsequently would be replaced by an SUV, and that vehicle could then be moved over to the animal control budget and be used for animal control purposes. So the idea being, let's replace an SUV with an SUV.
Okay.
And whether or not that would work or not, I don't know. So for instance, this year, the bid for the Dodge SUV, the state bid was awarded to a dealership in Connecticut. I can't explain that.
Yeah.
Not when we have Hillsborough,
Yeah.
one town away.
Sure. Yeah.
Anyway, all right.
Sean,
Yeah.
can you answer for me, please? When you say it'll go to administrative, is that the next chief's card that you're saying administrative, or is there a different administrative?
That's going to be up to the new chiefs. Now, if the terms of my contract related to the car were similar, the new chief would be able to make a selection from anything but the newest car.
Okay. Thank you.
While I'm here, it would not be, but that's my personal preference. I prefer the oldest
Yeah.
car on the line. I think my guys should get new cars, not me.
So are the
Chris?
Chargers able to access the places to which they're called, the dirt roads?
So
and-
far.
So far.
So far. There's the height difference between the ground clearance on a Charger and a, what do they call it, the Durango Police something or other,
Yeah.
is a couple of inches. In other words, the Durango, as an SUV, does have better ground clearance. But so far, the all-wheel drive Chargers have served us well. Now, we haven't had a catastrophic blizzard yet. You know,
Well,
I say
nobody-
yet because it is New Hampshire after all. But last year, the officers got it stuck once. Got one of them stuck once, that's for sure. And whether or not, hush. Whether or not a Durango would have been stuck in similar circumstances, I don't know. But, you know, it's true of any four-wheel drive vehicle. If you don't drive it someplace where a two-wheel drive can't go, you won't get stuck. But we have a lot. I mean, Benji was talking about some of the roads here in town, and if you drive around for more than 15 minutes, you know some of the roads are interesting. You know, you go down Cottage Road and forget it. You know, in 5 inches of snow, I would not want to go down Cottage Road in a Dodge Charger. I would not. I wouldn't want to go down that in a Jeep Wrangler.
It's off of Bridge
that's
Road,
it.
it
So-
goes down to the lake.
The short answer is yes. So far, the all-wheel drive Chargers are serving us fine, and it's a little bit of a roll of the dice. You are gambling against that catastrophic blizzard and mobility, but again, I think everybody in this room has faith in Benji and his crew to keep the roads open enough that we can get the calls. And they have, in the past, they have been responsive to that. It's anecdotal. I have not had to do it myself, but I know that officers have called Benji and said, we have a call at such and such, can you get a plow up there? And they do it. They do it right away. They leave their route and go take care of it.
Guilty, done the same.
So-
Come right up.
Thank you.
Anything else? Is it tomorrow yet?
Any other questions? Will be soon.
Well, you know, this is, I got a little bit emotional about the SRO position. I apologize for that. It's an important thing. If you have any questions, you know where I work. Please feel free to reach out to me. Despite the RSA, I can respond to direct questions. I just can't go out there and try and influence your vote. So please, if you have questions, reach out to me. Lori, if you want statistics, let me know what you want. As long as it's not that overly broad request again, I'll be happy to fulfill it as best I can.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Anything else, anybody?
No, thank you.
All right, have a safe ride home.
Thank you very
We have
much.
5 Dodgers or 4 Dodgers? We have 5.
We have 4 at the moment.
A lot easier than last night.
3 and 1.
We got one, and then one got four.
3, 1, and 1.
No, 3 and one.
To adjourn, minutes?
Oh, that was scary.
It was
On
weird.
Tuesday.
Finance Committee, we're not adjourned yet.
I decided to go down
People,
and turn on to resolution.
Bill, do you have
Next.
minutes?
Yep. I got minutes, but I got to amend them, because we had a correction on each one.
Is that what he said?
Right now,
I have something
Yeah.
on, a correction on
one.
the,
What happened was.
Guys, hey, ladies and
Hey,
gentlemen, we're conducting business.
I just gotta, this is real quick.
We were too, we were asking questions.
But
We just need to approve the minutes from 3 January and 8 January, but the minutes on 8 January needed a correction, because I said that this is in reference to the impacts on the firefighting operating budget. What I said was, I'll tell you what I will add. On the 3, yep. As soon as I find the right paragraph for 3 January, it's on firefighting operating budget. The operating budget on my minutes said, the Board of Fire Wards, not the Board of Selectmen, develop and recommend the fire department budget. Steve Roberts presented a proposed operating budget of X amount, which is X amount increase, blah, 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 blah. And I said that the things that impacted, the main drivers for the increase are the increase in the chief's salary and the increase in the dispatch communication contract services, and I should have added the increase, which is actually more than the other two, about $15,000 for an additional dollar stipend raise for the EMT firefighters. I'm just gonna add that in there, because that's a third driver that's actually exceeds each of the other two individually, okay? I mean, it's only for the, it's,
Move to approve as amended.
yeah.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and the 8 January minutes, I think I misinterpreted something that was said. This is not adding something, it's correcting something I had in there, which was under the government building maintenance, when I got too verbose and I talked about something that didn't even have to be in there. I talked about the dollars that were voted in last year for the bell tower, and I said that when we asked Ricky, he updated the committee. I said that that a contract for repairs to the bell tower was expected to be awarded in the spring, and I think the conversation that night was they had already awarded a contract, and it's
Yes.
expected to be completed in the spring. So I'll
Yeah. Yeah.
okay. Started, not necessarily completed.
Motion to amend?
Move to approve as amended.
We
I
need a
had,
second.
I had one other possible
Okay.
one.
What do you got?
Well, K, fire insurance reimbursement. I'm sorry everybody left because Naomi probably could have clarified this. But it says approximately 40K in insurance reimbursement on a ladder truck was placed in the general fund this year. Actually, the whole amount, which was more than the 40,000.
55 or so. 55. yeah.
55 was listed as a
Insurance reimbursement.
Yes.
yeah, but no, as a, what am I trying to think here? Revenue. It was listed as a revenue, so it automatically went, when the tax rate was set, into being spent on offsetting taxes. So I don't know how to phrase that, but it didn't just like 40,000 went in there and was sitting there. In fact, it was already used in October when the tax rate was set to
Right.
offset taxes because it came through listed as a revenue on the revenue sheet. So
So it should be changed to say what?
ask Naomi. She took off on us, that's what I was gonna do.
Still be out in the hallway.
But anyways,
Well, 40,000 came in somewhere, and it got used, and the
50,000.
reason the warrant article.
55.
55.
55.
And the,
Yeah.
they want to take 40 of it and put it back.
yeah,
in
but
the fire.
in fact, it's already been used to
Used.
offset taxes.
Used, yeah.
So it would, if they took 40,000 out of the undesignated fund balance to put toward that warrant article, it wouldn't necessarily be the same money. It would be out of that, the money's already been.
So do we amend that to say
Maybe Ricky can
something?
explain.
Ricky,
Ricky, we're talking about the money for the fire truck, the ladder truck.
Yes.
The-
I worded it. Go ahead.
We're a little
Yeah.
confused on the total amount that came in was used, I think it went to offset taxes in October.
Yeah,
I'm
because
not
it was, it's something I asked Beth, but clarify me if I'm.
No,
Correct me
it-
if I'm wrong.
yeah.
But it was listed as a revenue.
That's correct.
So when you looked at the revenues that came in and the sheet that you used to set the tax rate, you use that revenue number to offset taxes right there before you ever look at the fund balance
That's
and
correct.
take anything from that.
That's
So
correct.
Is this,
55,000 was used to offset taxes as part of the process.
As an
setting the tax
unanticipated revenue for the year of 2018.
rate. Yeah, and it went, so there's not like a chunk of money that hasn't been used sitting there because it was used to offset taxes already.
Right, before we even set the tax rate.
Right, so the warrant article is taking suppose you're taking 40,000 of that fire money and putting it back to the fire fund or whatever. You can't do it because you've already used it to offset taxes.
Well, it would be different money.
No,
that's
it'd be
all
different
I'm
money.
saying.
It'd be from the unexpended fund balance at that point.
Right, so
you'll
that's
still
what
take it out of the unexpended fund balance.
Yeah, you could
If there is,
still do
if there
that.
is enough. Okay.
Does that help you with your
So,
minutes?
yeah, how about, well, the only, we're just trying to correct some.
No, that's
Some
fine.
minutes that I got too verbose in it, and I got, I should have said
I
less.
understand that.
I said approximately 40K in insurance reimbursement on a ladder truck was placed in the general fund, but it was, so it was a 55 that came in reimbursement that got placed into town funds.
No, revenue.
revenue.
Yeah, it's as a revenue.
Okay,
And
to
use it.
clarify that, why the difference too between the numbers of 40 and 50, that was 54. 54,000.
How about if I just say that approximately $40,000 of an insurance reimbursement would be removed from the unexpended fund balance and placed into a capital reserve fund for fire, and not get into the details of why.
Because it's not insurance reimbursement. It's $40,000 of surplus. That's all
No,
it
it was
is.
revenue.
No, it was anticipated revenue.
No. His statement is that the money is $40,000 is being proposed to be taken out of surplus and used for a particular purpose. Trying to connect it back to the original doesn't work from an accounting point of view, but for most of us, it makes a lot of sense.
So you're saying I should say what?
Skip the whole thing.
Yeah, I apologize for ever bringing it up.
Does anybody else have any other business? We all know we have a meeting Wednesday night at 6:30, yes?
Yes.
And that would be school. We're gonna work on first.
Fire's coming in first because several people have expressed they have questions, and fire has questions for us.
Okay.
Just like PD and highway can come back at any time if they have concerns of what we're saying, that's important. Other than that, we are going to be doing the school, starting with the high school first. We have an invite, correct me if I'm wrong, tomorrow night up at the high school.
Friday, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
6
right.
o'clock is the dog and pony show.
And then there's a
6:30 board meeting?
board meeting,
7
correct.
o'clock is
And 7
public.
o'clock is the hearing.
Right. Did everybody get the separate email on the meeting dates? Did you get it?
Yes.
Greg?
Good job.
Those are too strong.
Motion to adjourn, please.
So move.
Second.
10:15.
Everybody go home and have a
Yeah,
nice
yeah,
evening. Thank you.
Evening, it's night.